2 weeks ago was snowing.
Call the meeting to order. This is the March 8th, 2016 meeting of the Town Plan and Zoning Commission of the Town of Fairfield. The first item on our agenda are the meeting minutes from February 9th, 2016. Looks like we have a full slate of regular members.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Alessi.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Coleman. Anybody have any questions or comments on those? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Minutes are adopted unanimously. Next item is a review of the revised meeting schedule.
Hello. Yeah, there was a revision. I think we got out to the commission members on 3 months modification. The first one is, I think we sent an email to everyone to make sure they're available. In March, our meeting this March was scheduled for the 22nd. The request is to change that to the 29th, which I think we're going to do. I believe the majority of the commission is available for that. The other 2 months that are affected are September. We're changing the September meeting from the 27th to the 20th. And then the October meeting, changing that from the 11th to the 4th. You could probably have an action on this just to amend the scheduling. And the bottom line is, if anybody between now and whenever, as I mentioned already, we have a majority of the board available for the 29th. If anyone has a problem with the other 2 dates, you can contact us, but I think, if there's a sense of the body that they're okay, you could probably go ahead and act on that tonight.
Okay, very good. So we have to approve, a schedule for the year, which we did, and these are a couple of dates that have been tweaked. If we do get closer to the later months and people have problems, we can try to organize to make adjustments. But I would recommend that somebody move to approve this revised schedule.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion to adopt the revised schedule by Commissioner Alessi.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Francis. Anybody have any comments, further discussion on this?
Yeah.
Yep, Commissioner Barron's.
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay, and again, I'm okay on the 29th. It's hard to say on the other days, but, I don't know that I'm not okay, so I think it's fine to adopt it.
Okay.
I just want to make sure, hope that during the year we can have some planning meetings scheduled. Those will be special meetings. I know they're not on the schedule.
Right.
But if we could have some meetings dedicated to planning, I know we talked about that. That's how really, a lot of our ideas and changes and progress generated.
Loosen up your schedule a little bit.
I know you'll be having some stuff for us, and I just,
Yes.
hope we can schedule that in. But as far as these regular meeting dates, I have no issue.
Very, very good. We do have an update to the master plan that's in the works, and we're going to be getting that fairly soon, and then we will be scheduling a planning meeting very shortly after that to have further meetings on further revisions to that and other planning issues. Anyone else have any other comments? Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? All right, the revised meeting schedule is adopted unanimously. Next item is closed executive session to discuss pending litigation regarding 479 Westway Road. Could I have a motion to go into closed executive session? Motion by Commissioner McAleese. Second by Commissioner Alessi. Any comments? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? All right. Motion carries unanimously. We're in closed executive session. Call the meeting back to order. Thanks for your patience. So we just adjourned the closed executive session. No votes were taken and no decisions were made. So we have many people in the room tonight for the public hearing. We have just a couple of notes. Last meeting was canceled, as I think you know, so all of the items from the prior agenda were rolled into this agenda, so we have a fair amount of old business that we need to get through. Then we'll go to public hearing. On the public hearing is Meadowcraft Road, and then after that is going to be Mill Hill Terrace and Pease Avenue. Okay? So next item on the agenda is new applications to recommend a public hearing. First is 25 Dunhill Road, special exception application of James and Magdalena Naletti pertaining to the construction of a single-family dwelling in the floodplain district.
Yeah, this floodplain district is an actual zoning district that we have in town. The majority of it is essentially one-rod highway where the public works facilities are and the sewage treatment plant. However, on the outskirts of this zone, there are some residential properties. In this zone, to build individual residential homes are permitted. However, to build them or any structure over 250 feet in this particular zone requires a special exception application to this commission, which also requires a public hearing. So that's why it's in front of you.
Very good. So the public hearing here is required, it's not discretionary.
Make a motion to move to public hearing.
Motion to move to public hearing by Commissioner Kennelly, second by Commissioner McAleese. Any other comments? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any abstentions? Any opposition? None. Abstentions? None. So move to public hearing unanimously. Next is 105 Meadowcroft Road, special exception application of the town of Fairfield pertaining to temporary portable classrooms in an A zone. That's at Holland Hill School.
Yeah, that's actually scheduled for tonight. It was on for our meeting to be recommended, the last one that we canceled. So just to keep with our procedure, you're basically recommended it till about 30 minutes from now.
All right. So point of procedure.
Yep.
I'll move
Motion to move to public hearing by Commissioner Coleman,
I'll second.
second by Commissioner Lessie. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, abstentions? It's moved to public hearing unanimously. That's the quickest one we'll see. Old business, 75 Senior Place, re-subdivision application of Adam Mayer for 2 lots in an A zone.
Yes, sir. This was, we had a hearing on this a while ago. Very simply, after a public hearing held on March 10th, 2009, the Planning and Zoning Commission approved on March 24th, 2009, this 2-lot subdivision. One of the actual condition of approval for that application was that, as offered by the applicant, the deed to Lot 2B2 shall reference the responsibility of the property owner to maintain adequate sight line for the driveway to Stratfield Road. Again, that was brought up at the hearing that we heard for this application. The line of sight easement is shown on the map. The sight line easement is reserved in favor of the state of Connecticut and/or its assignees. Again, the reason why this is in front of you is the applicant owner of the property did not file the map within the required amount of time to do that, so he was required to reapply to the commission. Just really briefly to refresh your memory what this is all about, is it's basically to create a 2-lot subdivision. One lot would be 13,796 square feet. That would be the vacant lot proposed. And then the existing single-family home, which would remain, would have a lot of 10,304 square feet. As you know, this is a Residence A zone, and a minimum 9,375 square feet is required. Also, as was with the 2009 application and what was in front of you at the last hearing, the property owner, as mentioned, the property includes a small strip of land consisting of 6,069 square feet owned by the state of Connecticut. As you know, the state of Connecticut has agreed to transfer the title to the applicant following subdivision approval. The applicant has posted a bond toward this purchase. There is an existing driveway from Stratfield Road, which is intended to serve the unimproved parcel. The permit for that construction of that driveway was obtained from the DOT prior to its construction. Again, as I mentioned, the reason for this application is the time filed in 2009 approval has expired. There were two issues, or actually two changes to our regulations since the time this was approved originally. The reg amendments since 2009 included frontage. Our section 2007 requires frontage on improved public streets equal to that of the required lot square. Residence A zone requires a 75-foot lot square, therefore 75-foot frontage is required. As mentioned at the hearing, proposed Lot B would have a 168-foot frontage, and Lot B2 would have a 198-foot frontage, which meets that requirement. The other thing, adjustment, had to do with the line of sight. As I mentioned already, there is a condition for the existing or current application. Records include information from Bark and Mess traffic engineers stating appropriate sight line, sight distance that can be achieved by the proposed driveway location. What our regs had amended did change is that also we would require at least the line of sight to be reviewed and approved by our engineering department. I think in your packet you received Laura Pooley's report dated February 22nd, 2016, but it basically indicates that she is okay or feels the line of sight is appropriate. So, with that, essentially you have an application that was approved. It's the same application. The two issues are regulation amendments that have been created since that time are met by this current plan, and they are requesting approval of the two-lot subdivision.
Thank you very much.
I'll move to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Barrett,
I'll second it.
second by Commissioner Coleman. Commissioner Barrett.
Yes, I think we need to approve this application. I'm not sure the full history was like really outlined in the hearing, because this has been around a while. Like I said, the original plan is still from 2002, which even predates me in 2003. So my recollection is it was once denied because the commission at that time felt that they couldn't maintain the sight lines. And then it came back again, and there was multiple entrances. They had like this driveway on Senior Place, and they had the entrance at Strawberry Road. They had to pick one. It was denied again. It wound up going to court, and the court actually overturned our decision because it said we had nothing in our regulations about sight lines, really. That was when, in 2009, we actually amended our regulations to say that sight lines had to be approved by the town engineer. So that's where that came from, and that's why we always see, if Laura Pooley says it's not adequate, then we determine it's not adequate, and if she says it's adequate, that's the expert that we usually go to determine sightline adequacy. So in 2009, it came back, and it really was approved, and a lot of us were on the commission at that time, or some of us when it was approved, and that's right here. And the only reason it's back to us is because it expired. So, whether we like this subdivision or subdivisions a lot, I think really does it meet our regs is the key question, and it does. And then does it meet what we've changed in the regs since then? And it's determined it does too. So, unless there's a different issue with the sight lines than what we're seeing, I don't see that we have much option but to approve it. Again, the commission as a body already approved it 7 years ago. So that's my thoughts on this.
Thank you. Commissioner Coleman?
Yeah, what he said. I don't have Commissioner Barrett's long history with this property, but it qualifies under our regs, and therefore I don't think we have a choice other than to approve it.
Yeah, the only other issue that was raised in the public hearing was the right-of-way owned by the state, and whether the status of the state as a co-applicant. But at the hearing, we actually reviewed those documents, and we have signed applications from both the owner of the land as well as the state DOT. So, I think everything else has been satisfied. Does anyone else have any comments? No? Commissioner Ford is voting on this, not me. So, I'll note that all the regular members were present for the hearing, except Commissioner Francis. Commissioner Ford, you were at the meeting, okay? So Commissioner Ford is going to sit in on this vote for Commissioner Francis, okay?
Okay.
All right. You ready to vote? All right. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? The application is approved unanimously. Next item is 8 Bloomfield Drive, compliance application of Turk Properties LLC for a 9-unit set-aside residential development pursuant to Connecticut General Statutes 830G in an R3 zone center design district. Why is it center design district? It's not. It's in an R3 zone.
Correct. All right, as the chairman has mentioned, we had a hearing on this application. The development basically consists of 3 buildings. Building A with 3 townhouses, Building B with 2 townhouses, and Building C with 2 townhouses and a 2 one-bedroom unit. The 2-bedroom units will be approximately 1,900 square feet, each of the habitable space, 7 units, and the 1-bedroom units will be approximately 620 square feet of habitable space. All units will have a 1-car garage. A total of 14 parking spaces are provided on the site. Basically, the calc they're using is 1.5 spaces per unit. There is also a new driveway that will be constructed at the intersection of Bloomfield Drive and Park Square Court. It is recommended by the applicant's traffic report that was submitted and reviewed at the hearing that an existing yield sign at Bloomfield Drive be removed, replaced by a stop sign in the Park Square Court approach and at the site access drive approach. On-street parking would be prohibited along the site frontage on the northeast side of Bloomfield Drive. We did receive an engineering report on this. First of all, having to do with the stormwater runoff calculation. The drainage, they reported that the drainage system as designed satisfies the department's requirements for stormwater management. Engineering also noted that the traffic report doesn't indicate an additional signage, which I've already described, should be installed. Will include that new stop sign and no parking on Bloomfield. The report also indicated adequate stopping site distance has been provided. In Ms. Pooley's report, she did mention that that the applicant would explain why they use the stopping site distance as opposed to the intersection site distance calculation. That was described to the commission, why that was used as part of the presentation that the applicant made. Again, as the chairman mentioned, this application is subject to state statute 8-30G. Review by this commission is ultimately driven by the issue, can the housing project be built without creating a threat to public interest for health and safety issues? That would include traffic and parking issues that would raise to a dangerous level, having adequate sewer, drainage, and water supply. And as I mentioned, the sewer commission, or I did not mention, but the hearing had mentioned that the sewer commission has approved this plan, and as I mentioned, the drainage and the traffic was reviewed by our engineering department. There were 2 other issues that were outlined in the code meeting under the planning and zoning section, and they were briefly discussed at the hearing, but I would strongly recommend a condition of approval that you would include one that was discussed pretty specifically at the hearing, had to do with including a description of pedestrian circulation interior. That was a request at the code meeting, and it was discussed at the public hearing that we get a revised plan showing pedestrian circulation designations for safe use for the public in and around the development. The other thing that was mentioned there, it's really a standard thing, but it was not as part of the presentation, even though this application, because of its state statute, does not need to meet the minimum requirements of our regulation, I would strongly recommend that the commission require at least a site plan revision that would show, include the coverage, bulk, setback, and height and parking requirements on the site plan. They were described and they're outlined in certain reports that we've received, but I think we should have it also on any plan that's going to be filed in the town clerk's office, so that anyone who looks at it, they know what those standards are. Other than that, Mr. Chairman, very briefly, that's what was submitted to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Thank you. Anyone? I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve. The following condition you had mentioned was you want a revision of the site plan to show the parking. Is that what you said?
The pedestrian circulation, interior pedestrian circulation.
I'd like to have that condition as part of my motion to approve. And then we're going to have a discussion after that.
Okay. Motion to approve with conditions by Commissioner Alessi,
I'll second it.
second by Commissioner Coleman. Start off with comments?
No, I mean, it was a good plan. The only issue I have is I don't think we can make a condition of approval, but would make a recommendation to the police commissioner to make that intersection a four-way stop. And I think that, I don't know.
Yeah, you could-
can't
you
make it a
could-
condition, but you can make it a recommendation.
Part of your
the
action
approval.
could be a recommendation that the application apply to the Fairfield Police Commission to establish a four-way stop at that intersection.
So I guess I'd like to have that recommendation as part of my motion to approve with my condition.
Which I'll second.
Okay. Motion's been amended and seconded. All right. Commissioner Coleman?
I know some of the neighbors expressed concern about the density of it, that they wish that there were maybe fewer units, but this is one of the nicest 830Gs that's come before us. They should all look like this, so I heartily approve it.
Okay. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Mcclellan.
Just clarify the motion for me again?
Sure. So presently, we have a motion to approve with, as I have three conditions. One is a revision to the site plan to provide coverage, bulk, setbacks, and other data, a pedestrian circulation plan, and a recommendation, a requirement that the applicant apply to the police department to make the intersection a four-way stop.
Thank you.
Okay. I have some others to discuss, but that's what's presently in the motion. Okay. Mr. Francis?
Then I heard a lot of discussion too about parking on the street, and I wonder while they're talking to the police commission if, I see we did, it is not going to be allowed on the northeast side, but to make sure that's enough to satisfy the neighbors who were upset about it.
I'm
And
sorry,
then-
to make sure it's enough to what?
Satisfy the neighbors who were upset about the parking, because this site had very limited parking, and it just met our regulations, maybe one space extra. And also, I would be concerned about that the spaces always be available, the snow would be removed, that would be a requirement, because, again, it was only the minimum number of spaces. So I wouldn't want the snow to be plowed in them and then they don't have the parking during the winter. Other than that, I thought it was a very attractive plan and well done.
Okay. So I think that, and on balance, your comments are that that there be required, that the applicant be required to submit a snow removal plan?
Right, and they did mention that it was going to be done, but perhaps we have to make it a condition. And also, there were a couple of complaints about parking on the street. It's probably something more the neighbors would have to talk to the police commission about.
Well, the application doesn't regulate the street. We're not, I mean, it's nothing to do with the application where the street parking is, we can't regulate that, but there is an intersection with a driveway.
Yes.
Which comes into the intersection, which we can make a recommendation for.
Thank you.
Commissioner Barrett's?
Yeah, I'm gonna support this application. As we know, we've heard a number of 830G applications in the last few years, and I think we all well understand what the criteria is. It has nothing to do with planning or our regulations, whether we think it's good or bad, or good for the town or good for the neighborhood. It's whether the need for affordable housing outweighs any public health, any, demonstrated impacts to public health
Yeah.
or safety that can't be remediated by the plan. And we did not hear a lot of those other than concerns about parking in the street, which is a legitimate concern. But again, I think we've learned from some of the other applications about, what constitutes this threat. One thing I'll say favorably about the plan, not that this matters either, is that there was some neighborhood support for this plan. I don't think we've almost ever seen, hardly any neighborhood support for, an 830G plan. So I thought that was good. There was some opposition too, to be fair, but there was some support. Again, the criteria is the town does need affordable housing. This is a quantitative measure, whether we think or not, it doesn't matter. And, the main public health and safety concern I heard, there was nothing really about sewers or drainage or anything. It was really just the parking on the street. So anything that we could do with conditions to, alleviate that, that would be good. The other thing I'll say is that it's 9 units. We've seen much more greater density requested on these applications. And finally, I'll say that we did amend our regulations last year to provide more density, to try to provide an alternative to 830G, but that wouldn't have even been able to be used, I don't think, on a property of this size, and nor would it give them the density that they're looking for. So I don't think we have much choice. The statute requires us to approve this. Just want to make sure we get all the conditions down. And Mr. Alessi said about the pedestrian circulation plan. Wasn't there another one you mentioned, Mr. Devanchik, about making sure the plans include coverage, bulk, and
Yep, that
setbacks
was
on it?
mentioned.
And you included that one too? Okay, good.
That is part of the present motion.
And a recommendation to the police department.
Correct.
Okay.
For four-way stop sign.
Before I stop.
Yeah.
Okay, good, then, that's good. I think we're all set then, thank you.
Right, so, I think it does bear, mentioning again that our task here is really divorced from our typical review of the regulations, because it's an application under Connecticut General Statutes 830G, they don't need to comply with any of our local regulations. If there are issues, we have to find that those issues are so unsafe, as a hazard to the public health, safety, and welfare, that's not outweighed by the need for affordable housing. The only issue that I heard, and I really have a problem with, that came out was the use of the stopping sight distance as opposed to the intersection sight distance. Those numbers were really close. Using the stopping sight distance, they just met the requirement, but using the intersection sight distance calculations, they didn't meet the safety, what we would consider to be the safety requirements. Now, the argument that was advanced is that this is a driveway, that this is a driveway and not an intersection. When it's got 4 ways at the same place, it's an entry to a development. It's got 2 lanes coming in and out. So I really would urge the police department to approve a recommendation to approve changing this to a 4-way stop. The issues we heard from the neighbors, just addressing some of the other comments about the parking and the issues on the street, had to do with some people, speeding around the curve. A 4-way stop would calm the area. I think that it would improve things tremendously there. We heard some comments from the public that the street was used as a cut-through. Putting a 4-way intersection stop there and not just a yield sign would, I think, do wonders here. So I just want to say that for the record, so that hopefully somebody will go back maybe the police department will go back and actually look at what we've said here, and, you know, they'll see that I really, yeah, how strongly I'm recommending this, because I think that's in part what makes this work and will also alleviate the concerns that the neighbors expressed about this land. So, you know, with all that having been said, you know, I think we have to support the application and the motion with the conditions as stated. The only other thing, which is not public health and safety, but which the applicant agreed on the record, was to do the sidewalks around the entry in a way. They were going to update the plan.
I would expect that would be included as part of their pedestrian circulation plan.
As part of pedestrian, okay,
That would
so
include those sidewalks.
fair enough, very good. So the sidewalks at the entry would be included in the pedestrian circulation plan. Okay. Any other comments, questions? Okay. The motion on the table is to approve with conditions as stated. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? The application is approved with conditions as stated, unanimously. All right, next item is compliances. 1860 Post Road, compliance application of Richard Lanza for facade improvements and a sign plan in the design commercial district. This is Hemlock Hardware.
Yeah, I think you received in your packet, you should have a picture of the existing Hemlock Hardware facade, along what they're proposing. What you should understand, and I think it might have been mentioned as part of your packet, but the picture that is shown as the proposed facade, the signage on there is not permitted. I think there's X-outs, there should be X-outs on that. Very simply, that original proposal, the sign was too large. So also in your packet, along with the picture of what the facade would look like, you also received a sign plan that is consistent with the size of requirements. As far as this application goes, it's a zoning compliance to you. However, our regulations do require, state that a zoning compliance is subject to standards of our section 25.7, which as per our 25.7.7. So essentially, on any type of facade application like this, the finding you need to make is that the proposed development facade plans shall be of such character as to harmonize with the neighborhood. It shall accomplish a transition in character between areas of unlike character, and it should preserve and enhance the appearance and the beauty of the community. That is essentially the finding you need to make on this particular application. As I mentioned to you, the sign that's proposed on the written plan meets your requirements as far as size and style. However, as I mentioned to you, right, the picture, please disregard the signs in that picture, they're not permitted. But the bottom line is that the facade, the entire facade needs to be, your finding needs to be, as I outlined in section 25.7.
So just to be clear, the signs in the photo that has the legend at the bottom, front colors with signs removed, there are a bunch of X's through those signs. Lawn and garden, paint and electrical.
Yeah, and actually the sign itself, Hemlock Hardware, is too big.
Too big, right. And there are also X's through the signs that they presently hang in the windows.
Yeah, well, those are existing non-conforming situations that we deal with
We have
every
another
day, and
problem.
we'll continue to enforce them to the best of our ability.
So, all right, just so everybody's clear what the application is, all right? So, Commissioner Alessi?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to deny this application.
A motion to deny by Commissioner Alessi. Any seconds?
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Barrett. Commissioner Alessi?
But just based on the fact that it just doesn't harmonize with our downtown, I just can't approve this sign. And plus, you know, like Commissioner Barrett said, I think at one point tonight that we're hoping to have a planning session, and we don't even know where we're going to extend our downtown area. I mean, what's proposed here, it just doesn't conform with downtown Fairfield as a look that we've always tried to maintain down there. So, I don't know. I mean, it reminds me of when Hertz came to town and wanted to change their building. So, just based on the harmony alone with the downtown area, I'm going to deny this application.
Thank you. Commissioner Barrett, do you have any comments?
No, I was wondering, Commissioner Leslie, I mean, I don't particularly like the sign. I mean, I'm not saying it's good. It's right now, it's right near our downtown area. Technically, it's in our design commercial district, not in the center design district, so
Correct.
those regs would apply. The sign complies in terms of size, though?
On the paper
On the
plan,
paper.
not on the picture.
Not on the
Yes,
picture.
yes, it does.
So,
That's
just
hard
to,
to...
just to be clear, the rendition here in the picture is non-compliant.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
So the dimensions in the detail, they're saying, when we build it, it'll be compliant.
It'll be
But that
smaller.
picture
It'll be
does not-
basically smaller than that. So.
doesn't represent what it will look like.
Yeah.
All right? But, there's really two components, though, to this application. One is the sign, and the second is the facade, right? So how do you feel about that?
I don't know, I guess the sign probably bothers me more than the facade. I'm willing to hear
All right.
others.
All right. I'll hold my breath until other people are finished. Anyone else?
Well,
Commissioner Francis?
I would think they should submit a valid application with the sign that's going to be there and the facade that's going to be there, and no cars parked where we can't see the windows, or whatever it is. It's
Yeah,
ridiculous.
there are no windows behind those cars, actually. Those are
Propane containers.
Yeah, storage bins. But,
Crazy.
so you'd like to see a rendering that is more accurate?
True.
All right.
Not to mention, are the Weber signs in the window illegal?
Excuse me?
The signs depicted in the window, they're illegal, the signs.
Yeah, they've existed there for many, many years. If they're changed, we can go after them. It's an ongoing review process that we go through with our enforcement of those particular types of signs.
Joe,
Please correct me if I'm wrong.
Presently, the regulations do not allow for signs such as those to be hung in the windows like that, but they would be considered a pre-existing nonconformity at this point, I think is what you're trying to say.
Right.
If they change...
And there is
the
some
down-
adjustment, I mean, depending on if they're interior, exterior, how close, how far,
Right,
whether they light up or not, we review all that.
right. Anyone else? Commissioner Coleman?
I think it has a big box look, and that's not what I would aspire to for the downtown area or near downtown area. It's just not attractive.
Commissioner McAlee?
I agree with Commissioner Francis on this one rendering, because if you look at the blueprint drawing, the black line drawing, it does call out a graphic as if the graphic is part of the sign system, and you can't see those with the cars in a way.
Yeah.
So it
That's
would
why
be
there's
helpful.
X's through them.
No, the one below in the brick wall,
Yeah.
not the, are they on the other one too? No, they're not, these here behind the cars, they show up on this plan elevation as EG-8 4x4 graphic, as if it's part of the wall system, not up high on the
Oh, so the plan moves the lawn, garden, and paint down onto the brick?
no, actually, you see that's sort of like, this piece here, that's sort of like a corrugated piece, there's an image behind the car. If you look on drawing 1 on the sheet, it reads as a graphic, a 4x4 graphic, that the car is blocked, you can't even see what that is. So it would be helpful just to have a little more clarity on that. What that looks like, how it's framed, does that meet, is that a sign technically? I think it is.
Yeah.
Does it meet it?
Signs would not be permitted in those areas.
Right.
but they have them as signs, correct?
Well, yeah,
No,
so...
on the rendering, but they're not permitted.
But they are on the drawing.
The point that's being made is that notwithstanding that the rendering has those X's through it, and we're being told to look at the plan,
Yeah.
the plan itself does include these graphics on the building,
Which you would not approve.
which we would not approve.
That's
So
correct.
neither the rendering or the plan
No,
are
you're right.
compliant with our
They need to
regulations.
be, if you were to approve this, it would have to be a condition of approval
Right.
that those modifications be made as they did with Xing out this picture.
All right. So my comments are, I agree with what everybody's saying about the signs. I personally don't like the facade. I don't think it's in harmony with the neighborhood. It's got an industrial kind of feel to it. I don't think it's in keeping with the kind of congruity that we want to see between this area of the Post Road and the downtown area. So I applaud the applicant for trying to make improvements here. I think that, you know, it is warranted. I just think that there needs to be a little bit more attention paid to, you know, our town's look and feel.
Our town's look and feel.
Right? Anybody else have any comments? The motion on the table is to deny. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Application's denied unanimously. Next item is 653 Post Road, compliance application of Ray Mcclellan for a revised sign plan in the design commercial district.
Yes, I believe you did receive in your packet a picture representation, which is correct in the design style and size. Essentially, what you have here is a multi-tenanted building, which the overall sign plan right now is box signs. What this new applicant, what the property owner now wants to do is change the overall sign plan to individual letters. So as you see, the proposed sign would be an improvement from the box signs to individual letters. What he basically states, I think he received in his letter, is that if you were to approve this, it would reestablish or would establish the overall sign plan to be individual letters. So if there was ever any other change on the property, it would have to be individual letters as opposed to box signs. With that said, the proposed sign meets all your sign standards as far as size, location, and again, they're not lit, it's individual letters replacing the existing box sign.
Thank you. Can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Leslie,
I'll second.
second by Commissioner Barrett. Commissioner Leslie? No comments? Commissioner Barrett?
I don't have any comments either. Just want to keep things moving.
Yep. No? Anyone else? I think this is a good sign plan. The rendering accurately depicts what they
Yes, it
plan to
does.
do, and it meets our regulations, and it is, I think, an attractive sign.
And Mr. Chairman, if I can, I don't think it should be understated that it does reestablish any other new signage that would be the individual letters, which I know in the past the commission favored a lot more than the box signs.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, it's very attractive, and it's, you know, so. Very good. The motion on the table is to approve. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? The application is approved unanimously. Next item is public hearing. Do we need a moment to reconfigure?
Gotcha.
Okay. So, for the members of the public that are here, we have two items. First is Meadowcroft Road, second is Mill Hill Terrace and Pease Avenue. The way that this works is applicant will give their presentation. When they are finished, the public has an opportunity to be heard. Everyone who wants to speak can speak. Just ask you to keep your comments germane and relevant to the issues that we have before us. There's no time limit. When all the public has finished speaking, the applicant has an opportunity for rebuttal, and when the applicant is finished with their rebuttal, the hearing will be closed. We have a curfew of 11 o'clock, and if we're not finished with an item at that time, then we will continue the hearing and leave it open until our next regular meeting. Okay, so if the Mill Hill Terrace and Pease Avenue is continued, it won't be to our next regular meeting, it will be to our first meeting in April 8th. Okay? So with that, I'll call 105 Meadowcroft Road. special exception application of the town of Fairfield pertaining to 2 modular classrooms at Holland Hill School in an A zone.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Philip Serrano. I'm the architect for this project representing the town of Fairfield. The principal of the school is with me tonight, and so is Sal Morabito from the school administration. Really simply, this is 2 modular classrooms that are intended to be used for the next 3 years at the school. There's a plan on the table with the town to renovate the building, so we need these classrooms while they do the renovation. As you can see on the site plan here, I'm sorry. We've placed the 2 classrooms in the front of the school here, and the reason we chose that location was we had a lot of conversations and discussions about where potentially they could be doing additions to the school and where they needed to be able to stage as they're working on the building, which is the reason we didn't want to put them in the back over here. So we put them here so you could have access directly into the building here. The area, the red line that's on here is a fence, so the area will be fenced in so children can go from the school into the modular classrooms, back into the school in a secure area. The gates on the fence will all have card readers on them, so it'll be all secure, as secure as the school is itself. In plan, simply, there are 2 classrooms with bathrooms in them. There's a ramp and a stair in the front, and as I said, the area is fenced off. The buildings meet all of the regulations, so there's no variance that are needed. They meet the coverage, setbacks, and everything else. With that said, I'm happy to take any questions.
Sure, very good. Commissioner Alessi?
Where is the proposed construction supposed to be?
At this point, that hasn't been decided. They haven't even, the building committee was only formed 2 days ago, was sworn in a couple of days ago. So that conversation hasn't taken place. So the additions could be almost any place. We just, looking at the site with the school administration and the principal, think that the least likely place would be over here. We think that the additions would be potentially back here, but I cannot commit to that.
See, I remember when my kids went to Stratfield School, there were portables, and it bothered me that the portables were right next to the parking lot. It just for safety issues. Now, you mentioned a fence. What kind of fence are we proposing? A 4-foot chain link fence?
6 feet.
Stockade?
It's proposed as a chain link fence right now. I'm sure the school would entertain options to that.
And where would the opening to the fence be?
There's an opening to the fence here, and there's an opening on that side, and then there's an opening here. This opening here is exit only, just so in an emergency you can get out of it.
Right.
These 2 would be so that you could basically, teachers or administration could walk through here. They would have card readers on both sides of it, so you can't get into the fence without a card reader.
The students don't have card readers, just
Students do
faculty.
not, that's
Yeah.
correct. Faculty and administration.
Is that the door to the building right there?
The door for the building is right here. That goes right into the corridor.
And what's the purpose of the gates on either side there?
Well, the gates on either side is so that the administration or faculty can walk through here if they're parked in this parking lot over here without having to walk around the whole thing.
So you're basically making a cut-through for people to walk through to get...
Well, there's a sidewalk there now. We're trying to just keep the sidewalk that's there operational, basically. We don't really want these people that are here walking all the way around here to get to that point over there. I mean, that I consider much more of a safety hazard. You're bringing them almost out to the parking lot in the front.
It's also probably landscaped, and, it's grass,
It is all grass, correct?
And is this to accommodate a current overflow of students or to accommodate the loss of some classroom space as you do construction?
It's mostly to accommodate classroom space as we do construction.
So you couldn't go forward with the construction without having
That's correct.
this? Thank you.
Commissioner Barracks, and then I have a question.
The card reader, do you need the card reader to get out of the...
No, you need the card reader to get into the fenced area. You always have to be able to get out of the fenced area.
Okay.
It's an emergency egress, just
okay.
like a panic bar on a door.
Okay,
Right.
okay, so you can get, you just needed to get into the...
That's correct.
Somehow I thought you said it was 2 ways, and that sounded
No.
strange. And then the last thing, in the memo we got, I guess this is from Sal Morabito, actually. It says that, so basically you're asking us to approve this, but with the understanding that these will be removed once construction is complete, and all the other portables that are on site today will be removed.
That's correct. Currently, there's 2 back here, and there's 1 over here, so when we do this, we'll have 5 of them. The plan is, we anticipate 3 years from now, the construction will be gone, and all the modular portable classrooms will be gone also.
Where are these portables coming from? Are they?
These here, we would lease these, so we would go out to bid on them.
Okay.
The three in the back are being used now?
Correct.
How long have they been there?
Years.
Approximately.
How long have the ones that are in the back been there?
Sal Morabito, Manager of Construction for Board of Education. The single unit was put in 2000. The double unit replaced previous portables that were there. The double unit was put in 2007.
And when was the previous double?
I don't have that data.
More than 2 decades ago.
Correct.
More than 20 years ago, for sure.
Yes.
So how much room is there between the portables and the chain link or the fence, the longest, along the longest route?
How much room? It's easier to actually see it.
Yeah. You know,
The distance between the fence and the unit there is
Yeah.
10 feet.
10 feet?
Yeah. And the fence would tie right into the building on that corner.
Yeah.
Are the ones in the back fenced in too?
Nope.
No.
No, so the ones in the back, the students go out here into these, and then they go out a door here into those.
Right. And the whole property is not fenced, so
That's correct.
this is, so, you know, I think that what, you know, I'm sensing is some trepidation around, you know, basically putting these 2 portable units with, you know, surrounded by a chain link fence that's, you know,
Well,
right there,
understand, the
10 feet.
fence is on one side, right? The other 3 sides are, these 2 sides here are the building, there's not a fence on those 2
Right.
sides. We're just trying to make it secure so kids
Yeah.
can go from the school into these classrooms without any exposure to
yeah.
people, basically.
But if you have 3 portables in the back now, why don't you put the 2 other portables
That's my next question.
right where they've been for the last 20 years? Because if you're anticipating doing construction back there, which you're probably not, considering the fact you already have 3 portables there, why don't you just take those 2 new portables and put them back where the other ones is, and
Tack 'em on.
and fence all of them in, especially when construction's going on?
Right.
Well, that's a great question, and the answer
you.
to that question is, we anticipate the chances of construction going on back here are pretty great. The chances of construction going up here are not so great, and potentially, when they do the project, these portables may need to be moved. Because if that's where the addition's gonna go, we're not gonna let the addition, those portables dictate where the addition goes. But we don't wanna create more of a problem by putting more modular portable classrooms in the back.
Honestly, it seems like we're putting the cart in front of the horse. I think we should have a construction plan, find out where we're gonna build, and then discuss where we're gonna put the portables. That's what
And-
makes more sense to me, before we just approve a plan
Yeah.
to put portables here, 2 in the front, 1 in the middle and the back, and 1 in the back corner. I think you should have a construction plan and say, TPZ, this is where our construction plan is, and this is where we wanna put the portables,
And-
because you don't need the portables until you can do the construction anyway.
And maybe we, at that point, you know, move the other 3 to co-locate with the 2 new.
Correct.
Good.
Hi, everybody. Just to backtrack again, part of this reason for the portables is for space during construction and is also for immediate space problems. So we have this issue now. The portables in the back, we do not know what our final plan is going to be. The probable locations for construction are probably in 2 places. Either at either side of the gymnasium, front and back, or a loop around similar to what happened at Riverfield, where we created a courtyard. There is a possibility that we will have to have swing space during the construction and stage it, actually build front classrooms, take these out, build a second addition back. We're talking about that, but without the permanent project architect, which is scheduled for a selection process on Thursday. The bids have already been out. They're doing their selections for a short list on Thursday, and within a few weeks, they'll have an architect on board. This is needed, these 2 classrooms are needed for enrollment September 1. So putting the cart before the horse. It's combining two projects. It was either a standalone project or part of the Holland Hill Building Committee project. Both were on our docket, and it's being kept in the moniker of the Holland Hill Building Committee so that we can get state reimbursement for the work.
How long do you know before you have a set of plans?
Probably about 6 months. They'll have schematic plans for development of the possible scenarios within a couple, 3 months, once the building committee decides on the most appropriate scheme to go forward with, in conjunction with the construction manager, who is the next professional to be picked after the architect. They'll start developing the plans. In actuality, the building committee probably won't be coming before the town boards for funding for the project, for the large project,
Right.
about a year.
So you need the
We,
portables
we need these
Classrooms today.
by September 1
for enrollment,
for enrollment.
not so much for construction. But
it'll be-
at some point, you're going to need them for construction.
We're going to need them during the construction also, but we do have an immediate enrollment issue at Holland Hill. It's 2 steps back, 1 step back to go 2 steps forward.
That answered the question.
Are they that answered your question? Yeah, so,
Chair.
are they gonna be full?
Are they going to be what?
Are they gonna be full? September 1st, are the 2 new portables going to be full?
Yes.
So it's really not relative to the construction. You need 2 portables September 1st, and then you're gonna have to work around the construction when that comes down.
We're working around space deficiencies right now, which is the reason for the the larger construction project as it is. We just have an immediate issue right now because the number of sections, I can bring up the principal to explain how many sections of classes that she had that she didn't have 2 years ago.
Mr. Ford?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to piggyback on that, the 2 additional classrooms are probably insufficient to meet the needs of the building as it is today. Isn't that right?
So, yes.
I think the answer to that is
Yes.
yes, right?
Right.
I think you don't have a music classroom, you have administrators, doubling up in
I'm going to let the
offices.
principal address that.
Good evening, Laura Cortella, principal of Holland Hill. So currently, right now, we have a space constraint. We have OT and PT working out of the closet in a hallway. We have a music teacher pushing a cart through the hallways. We have a library media specialist when the library is closed for testing, which is many months and weeks out of the year. She's pushing her cart down the hallway. We had some unexpected enrollment, I would say, over the past 4 years, where we keep getting more students moving into Holland Hill, where our sections keep increasing. Most of our grade levels, we either have 3 or 4 sections. So right now, those portables already would be used for September 1st. And then the walkway that you were talking about for that sidewalk, the majority of our population is a walking community. So many of our children walk up a back path and come around the side of the building and then come down that sidewalk in the morning. So that is a walkway
Which
for
one?
students.
The one
So
with the
where
gate.
he was talking about that sidewalk that's going to go in front of the portable classrooms, parents come around the back corner of the school, walk down that sidewalk, and get entry into the building by the front door.
Yeah.
So why are we putting a locking gate there if that's a major walkway? That makes, I don't understand.
But if the fence on both sides requires a key card in order to open the gate, and the parents don't have key cards, do they?
So
And the
we-
kids don't have key cards, so...
So again, with some of the fencing for the back of the school as well, there would have to be during drop-off and pickup times, that area being accessible, because we're in the same issue in the back of the building, that parents pick up from the back doors of the classrooms. So again, true neighborhood school, parents come up at dismissal time, 2:45, the back door of the classroom opens and still children dismiss. So wherever you put them, whether it's in the front of the building or in the back of the building, you're going to have the same issue with the fencing. Unlocking it at 2:45, either myself or another staff member manning, either in the back or the front, allowing parents in to dismiss children.
So the purpose of this fencing and the lock gate is during the course of the day, the way you would close the building and lock it normally.
Right.
During the arrival and dismissal times, just as the doors would be open, so too the fenced gates, these fence
Exactly.
gates.
Yeah. But, and that makes sense, and I guess begs the question as to why similar fences aren't constructed around the other portables around the back for those same safety concerns.
They will be under a different...
They will be,
Under a different funding program.
under a I see, okay.
It's a capital, non-recurring project
Okay.
for multiple schools that have this issue.
Yeah, it's not that we're
This
against
funding.
the public safety and wanting the fencing and that kind of thing. It just, if you don't know any better, it just kind of strikes you as odd that you have these fences on both sides and during times when they need the sidewalk.
Yeah, we're in a new era. The buildings have been completely locked out since Sandy Hook. It's a lot more
Right.
strict as far as the entry into our buildings. For anybody that's a parent knows that. Visiting during the day, you have to be buzzed in, you have to have a reason and an appointment for
Yeah.
being there and all that. We're extending that to the portables. There's a separate project for the portables in the back, fencing those not only here, but at Mill Hill,
Right.
at Jennings, and so on.
Because in order to
This
meet
is-
that lockdown, you've got to have, it's all got to be
Correct.
enclosed, right? I see.
Correct.
So, Commissioner Kennelly?
I was just going to say, so clearly through these two initiatives, you'll end up with the same level, same level of security for the back portables, the new portables, and the school, the
Correct.
current plan. Okay.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there any member of the public that wishes to be heard on this item? Welcome back.
Thank you. For the record, Anthony Calabrese, 216 Autumn Ridge Road. Here tonight, as a former commissioner, I will keep it short, but I'm here tonight on behalf of the Board of Education as the vice chairman. I'm going to urge all of you to please support this project. Holland Hill, and I don't know how many of you are from that area or familiar with the situation we have going on there. There's overcrowding. Principal spoke to it a little bit, but I mean, we toured with the RTM a couple weeks ago, and during the day, I mean, they've got kids in closets, literally in storage closets, multiple storage closets, learning, whether it's, occupational therapy, physical therapy. They've got music on the stage behind the APR right now. It's a very sad situation, and these portables will get them a little relief that they need for this upcoming year. The enrollment numbers are going up there. They're going to trend down at some point over the next few years, but then they're projected to go back up. So this space is desperately needed. We had the consultants come in. They've looked at the racial imbalance for this school, McKinley, which is tied into Holland Hill, and they've told us right now there is no way to pocket redistrict the kids from Holland Hill or from McKinley to solve that issue. We just don't have the space within our other schools to do it. And that's coming from our consultants. So, I mean, it's all out there in the public, but again, I just wanted to urge you guys to please support this project, and we appreciate your time and consideration for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public who wish to be heard on this? No? Okay. Mr. Strong?
Thank you.
All set. All right, I'll close the public hearing on this item. Next item on the agenda is 845 and 917 Mill Hill Terrace and 130 and 156 Pease Avenue. Special exception application of Maplewood Senior Living pertaining to the construction of an assisted living facility in an A, B, an R3, and the DRD zones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, ladies and gentlemen of the public. Good evening. My name is John Fallon. I'm here tonight representing the applicant, Maplewood Senior Living. Also here with me tonight, in addition to my colleagues who I'll introduce during our presentation, is attorney Donald Marchand, who is the administrator of the estate of Albert Garofalo, who is the owner of the property. We are the contract purchaser of the property. This is an application, as your call indicates, requesting a special exception approval for an assisted living facility at the property located at 917 and 845 Mill Hill Terrace and 130, 156 Pease Avenue. And as the chair indicates, it's a large piece of property, 27 acres, so it comprises numerous zones, A, B, R3, and the DRD zone. And something you may hear me repeat to the point of gilding the lily unnecessarily is it is a permitted use in these residential zones pursuant to section 5.1.4C. It is not a business use, it is not a commercial use, it is under your regulations a permitted special exception use. As I said, the property does comprise 27 acres. Now let me say a few words about Maplewood Senior Living. Maplewood Senior Living is a Westport-based company. It's one of the most prominent owners and managers of senior living facilities in the region, indeed in the country. It has operating nearby here facilities in Darien, Newtown, Bethel, Danbury, Orange, and Norwalk. The prime underlying commitment to Maplewood is providing the highest level of services and care for residents and their family members in a very comfortable and extremely aesthetically attractive setting, as we hope you will agree after we've completed our presentation. The specifics of the proposal will be discussed with you as I call our various consultants momentarily, but it is the development of Maplewood at Southport, which is a 98-unit assisted living facility and memory care community. The building proposed is with a total footprint of 38,450 square feet and a total floor area of 91,926 square feet, and it will be comprised of 2 or 3 stories. We've had a thorough review up to this point with regard to the town's other bodies having jurisdiction with regard to the matter. A substantial portion of the property. I want to point out here, we've received a unanimous approval from the Inland Wetlands Agency. 2014-1514 is the permit number. That was unanimously approved on November 13, 2015. As a result of the proposal that was made to the Inland Wetlands Agency and their approval, fully 15 acres of this 27-acre site will in fact be dedicated in perpetuity under conservation easements and stewardship easements for the town. So you've got a 27-acre piece of property sitting in a neighborhood in Southport, and we want to build an assisted living facility with a memory care component, and we're going to put 15 acres of the 27 under perpetual conservation easement. It sounds to me like a very good deal environmentally for the town, because what we're doing here is we're taking a high-quality development from an experienced developer, and we're blending it, as you'll see, into a site that's particularly well-suited, given the nature of the proposed use, the low-scale and low-impact proposal that we're making here. And at the end of the day, as I say repeatedly, of this 27-acre parcel, 15 will be preserved in perpetuity as open space. This Planning and Zoning Commission recognized the need for such assisted living facilities in Fairfield when you adopted, as an amendment a number of years ago, the current regulations that establish assisted living as a permitted use in the zones in Fairfield, including the residential zone. It's sad but true to say that since the time that you adopted that regulations, the demographics, both nationally and in this area, have made the need for these types of facilities even more intense. Presently, 5.2 million Americans suffer from Alzheimer's, and of those, approximately 5 million are over the age of 65. The staggering thought is that studies have confirmed that by 2040, those numbers of age-afflicted people is going to double, which would make sense when you consider the overall demographics of our towns and others. Clearly in Fairfield, the demographics in this town and the immediate region are particularly compelling, and there's a significant need for a facility such as ours devoted to memory care in the context of assisted living. As I said, we previously obtained unanimous approval of our inland wetlands permit. We did have a code enforcement review session on January 6, 2015, and all the comments and requests with regard to those code minutes have been addressed. We received the unanimous approval, and you have a letter dated December 1, 2014, from the Economic Development Commission after a presentation to them. And about a week and a half ago, we received the approval of the WPCA for connection of sewers, having provided them with a capacity analysis allowing them to confirm that the flows associated with our proposal are well within the scope and ability of the system to handle. So this is the last step in the process with regard to this facility. So let me talk to you tonight about our presentation. I'm going to ask Mr. Peter Romano of Land Tech, he and his company are our site engineers. He'll review with you briefly the existing conditions on site, the proposed site plan, and the site engineering and drainage plan. Obviously, working in collaboration with the Wetlands Agency and the engineering department, we put those plans together. I'm going to ask Mr. Jason Williams of Mcclellan and McBroom, who's our landscape architect, to briefly overview in the context of that site plan, our landscaping plan. We pride ourselves on making sure that these facilities are welcoming and beautiful and natural for our residents and their families, and I think you'll see that commitment in the landscaping plan that Jason's going to review with you. Michael Stein of Stein Truce is our architect. He's going to review with you the architectural design here, how understated we believe it is, the quality of the workmanship and the floor plans. We also have, obviously, a traffic report for you. Neil Olinsky of Mcclellan and McBroom will review that report to you that has been submitted prior to tonight's hearing. And then I'll come back and have some concluding remarks, and obviously all of our consultants will remain in attendance and be pleased to answer any questions you might have. Mr. Romano.
Good evening. I'm Pete Romano. I'm principal with the firm Land Tech out of Westport. We're civil site structural engineers representing Maplewood Senior Living Facilities. As normally is the case, John's pretty much stolen my thunder this evening. I can be fairly brief and take you through some of the stuff that we prepared on behalf of Maplewood. This is the 27 acres piece of property up on the, I'm sorry, I don't have my pointer this evening. Let's just orient you. This is Mill Hill Terrace, Pease Avenue. This is Route 95. There's generally a swath of wetlands that runs through the piece of property here, and then these are the three different lots that this is actually 845 Mill Hill, 917 Mill Hill. This is Pease Avenue lots. There's actually, I think John explained that there's three different lots on our piece of property that totals to 27 acres. And this is what the proposed development is. As John explained, Lot 2 and generally through this entire area is the 13, almost 14 acres of conservation easement area. Access will be off of Mill Hill Terrace. We have one little wetlands crossing, there's actually already a driveway there that goes across with a little culvert that we're utilizing, enhancing and increasing the size of the culvert. And then this is our parking area, new building. There's only emergency access way out onto Pease Avenue. Again, we're required to have 59 parking spaces. We actually have 60. The interesting thing on this 27 acres of land, we're actually only disturbing almost 5 acres, 4.9 acres of land is being disturbed in order to create the building, the parking, and the driveway into the piece of property. The way we've handled the drainage, a couple different ways. I think John alluded to the fact that Laura from the conservation, from engineering has approved our drainage plans. We've handled the drainage in a couple different ways. We've used rain gardens where appropriate in some of the areas, which is a soft drainage, no curbs on the roads. It'll flow into the rain gardens to create a better water quality before it discharges to the wetlands. And then some of those areas where we needed to pick up some of the storm drainage and wasn't convenient to go into rain gardens, we've used what I'm sure you've seen a number of times, underground storage facilities for storm drainage. In Fairfield, as you know, they have a criteria where you have to accommodate all the different storms, all the way up from a 2-year storm to a 100-year storm. And in each instance on this piece of property, we've actually reduced the flows off of our piece of property. We've essentially handled all the storm drainage on our property, so there's no impact to the drainage on the streets that abut our proposed project. I think John mentioned we're served by sanitary sewer. We'll have water that'll be brought in from Pease Avenue. Sanitary sewer actually runs through the center of our site. We did receive WPCA approval a couple weeks ago that there is adequate capacity in the sanitary sewer to accommodate our new development. Where possible, we've used pervious pavements to further reduce the storm drainage requirements on here. There is in your packages, there is a lighting plan that conforms to the standards of the town of Fairfield. And Jason Williams from the Malone and Broom will go take you through the planting plan. I'd be happy to answer any of the questions, but our stuff is pretty straightforward. We went in front of the Code Enforcement Committee, and we've addressed all those comments. The one thing I will point out to you, we got approvals through in the wetlands. There were some conditions that they asked us to incorporate into the plans. There was nothing that is not able to be done. We just simply didn't revise the plans before we submitted them to your commission, figuring that we would have some conditions from your commission if we do in fact receive approval from you. So the conditions that are from conservation, some have been addressed. Some of the smaller things that we know will probably change by the time we get through your commission and eventually seek a zoning permit have not been incorporated into the plans, but I can attest to you that those conditions can in fact be met. And I'd be happy to answer any questions, but I think, I'm the least of the presenters tonight. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to do it. Otherwise, I'll turn it over to our next. Okay.
Commissioner Francis had, Commissioner Francis.
Both at the code compliance, both police and fire asked for full vehicular access.
I'm sorry, can you say that one more time?
Both police and fire asked for full vehicular access.
Yes.
And they have that.
They have, yes. We have, I think I pointed out, there's obviously the driveway that leads in from Mill Hill Terrace is completely compliant in order to service fire and police. But then we also have this emergency access way that'll normally, you've seen it before in big buildings. The fire departments usually want to get at least 3 sides of the building covered access-wise. And we also have emergency access way that leads all the way around to the other side of the building. This driveway here, which will be a subject, I'm sure, of some of the neighbors' concerns, it will only be an emergency access. It'll have breakaway bollards on it, so that
Will have what?
bollards, those sort of, you've seen them in parking lots. They're, 2 or 3 feet high. They're usually made out of concrete so that a car can't go either jump a curb.
Speed bumps?
No, they're not speed bumps. They're a column. They're kind of a little column, looks like a little lolly column or a pipe or something sticking out of the ground. These you'll be able to drive across or drive over. The fire truck will be able to drive over them or knock them down in the event they need to come through.
Will it be for ambulances or just?
Exactly. Every emergency vehicle for the town of Fairfield will be able to negotiate that driveway.
It will be for emergency access for fire and so on. Ambulances, which is something that I can cover right now, based upon our other facilities, we generally have ambulances 4 to 5 trips per week, and they are almost never emergencies. They're normally somebody being transported to the facility from a hospital or somebody, unfortunately, who needs to go to the hospital, but very seldom are there emergencies. They will not use the Pease Avenue situation. They'll use the Mill Hill Terrace main entrance. the Pease Avenue is here for fire emergencies. But, and this plan, in terms of its suitability as far as circulatory access, has been reviewed by the fire marshal.
And then secondly, the fire department asked for a maintenance plan for the grass pavers. Now, where are the grass pavers?
That's what I was just explaining to you. There is, here's the pavement, right? So off of the pavement, there'll be grass pavers. This little shaded area here represents grass pavers, and you've seen them. There'll be pavers that the grass actually comes up through. If we look at it, it'll look like lawn, but it's able to support a emergency, or any vehicle, quite frankly. And normally what the fire departments want, they want, because obviously if it's lawn, it's very difficult for them to tell where it is. So they want some type of demarcation, whether it be in the way of a post or some kind of signage that tells them that it's in a certain particular area. Because, you know, obviously once the snow is there and it's, and if it isn't plowed, but the idea is that they will plow it, and this surface will allow somebody to go in there and remove some of the snow so they can get around it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I have a question. Based on where the building is, why wouldn't you use Pease Avenue as the entrance and exit?
Because your regulations,
The classification of the road is not appropriate.
Regulations, section 27.4.9.4 requires that one of the requirements of an assisted living facility is it has to be located, has to have its primary ingress and egress on a, quote, major or collector road as shown on the Fairfield Master Plan.
Right.
And Pease is not, Mill Hill Terrace is.
Well, let's say you keep the address as Mill Hill Terrace and keep that driveway and have two entrances and exits, or two driveways on Pease Avenue as well.
We could certainly satisfy the requirements of your regulations by maintaining a primary ingress and egress on Mill Hill Terrace. To be very candid with you, the reason that we have proposed what we're proposing here on Pease Avenue is because early on, before we filed anything, we had a session at the Pequot Library where we had invited the neighbors and so on and so forth, and we received very strong feedback from them that they would not like to see this be a common alternate ingress and egress. We reviewed that with the fire marshal. He was comfortable with what we're proposing, and that's why we did it. It was not totally dissimilar, not to mix apples and oranges, that you remember the conversation we had on Thorpe Street. Same sort of thing. So that's basically why we did it. But I will say that to satisfy the regulations, we do have to have our primary on Mill Hill Terrace because that is a major collector road.
That doesn't, but what you're saying is that the configuration is not the applicant's choice. It is as a result of consideration of the process, and you don't believe that the regulations preclude you from having a second ingress and egress.
Do not.
But the primary, you know, you have to maintain the one on Mill Hill Terrace, but the regulations would allow a second driveway as well.
Absolutely.
Commissioner Barrett's.
So, Mr. Romano,
Yes.
right? Is somebody else going to talk about traffic circulation?
Yes.
Oh, the site? Or?
Inside the site, inside the site, there's not a real traffic, unless you want to have a question,
I'm
but I
gonna
mean,
merge-
really, it's
like,
outside the
just-
site.
If a
right?
fire truck comes in from
Yep.
Mill Hill Terrace,
Yep.
just how will he negotiate his way through the site and turn
Yes.
around?
Yes, it is, there's a hammer. I know you want to do the engineering.
Mr. Romano will address that.
Okay.
But it has been reviewed by the fire marshal.
Okay.
Down to the templates and everything else.
You gotta use the mic.
Don't we work well together?
Yeah, we'll let him talk while he's up here and then.
Mr. Romano, just grab the mic.
Yep. Can you use the microphone, please?
I'm sorry, sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, the driveway obviously can accommodate. When you get down here, this hammerhead actually allows them. So in other words, if a fire truck comes in here and doesn't need to go out there for any reason, they won't necessarily have to go out there. But this is the hammerhead. You pull in here, back in here, and come back out again. Okay.
They can make the hammerhead turn.
Exactly.
Any other questions of Mr. Romano at this time?
Because if there is, John can answer them.
I'd like to call on Mr. Jason Williams, my next witness, who's much more respectful, I might indicate. He's got to review the landscaping plan with you. He has it on a board. We have it here too. You don't have to test your eye. And again, while I'm handing this out, it is indicative of the fact that if you go to the Maplewood facilities, interior and exterior, I think you see a commitment to making sure that it is attractive and welcoming for residents, and landscaping is a big part of that.
Yeah, so good evening, everyone. My name is Jason Williams. I'm a lead landscape architect with Mcclellan and Mack Broom. Attorney Fallon really hit a good point kind of at the beginning of his presentation, and that is, for a project like this, the landscaping is actually very, very important. Someone like myself at one point in time could be driving a parent to this site. So someone who maybe is going through dementia or is really having changes mentally with their life, the first scene that they see when coming into the site is really going to say whether they feel comfortable or not staying here. Additionally, occupants inside of the building, when looking out a window, there's a possibility for healing elements with the plantings, changes in textures and colors that can really improve someone's state of mind. The one thing about the existing conditions on this site is it's filled with invasive exotic plants. So doing something on this site is really, really a big plus. Why? Because we remove invasive plants, we cut down on seed production that contributes to more invasive plants being planted and seeded down the watershed. The landscaping plan is actually very, very simple. It's a little different from what you normally see. Starting on Mill Hill Terrace, and if anybody has visited the site, you will really be able to understand the reasoning behind a lot of the planting design. Coming off of Mill Hill Terrace, we pass over a nice cobble apron and a small little column. Not a big sign that says, you know, welcome to Maplewood. A nice little simple column with a nice little sign hanging off. Junipers in front of it, native switchgrass behind it, and winterberry holly just beyond that. As we move through the meandering drive, you go through a grove of native tulip trees, and looking off to your left, you see really this spectacular wetland system that changes into the large pond. As you continue to meander, you go through a grove of white dogwood trees, and you start to notice a real difference. Underneath the trees, it's not mown lawn. It's actually a seeded landscape. It's a seed mixture that is designed for open woodlands where there is some shade. And that's represented by all of the stippling around the entire access in and around the parking lot as well. So it's a meadow landscape along the edge of the driveway. As you make your way through the white flowering dogwoods over the decorative bridge, you enter our parking area. And notice that you pass through a few rain gardens. The rain gardens are planted with native flowering perennials into the parking area, which has large red oaks in the parking islands. And on the northern part of the parking area, just planted out of the meadow, groves of birch trees, just as the understory to our large overstory system here. So we've got what you normally see in nature, large overstory going down to understory trees, herbaceous layer going down to the riparian edge and the pond. As we move our way into around the building, you can see in this block here and over here some of the plants that we're planting. Along the building foundation, plants like oak leaf hydrangea, nine bark, winterberry, and in front of those, native grasses such as prairie dropseed and ferns, depending on the amount of sun. Along the southern edge of the building, we have a row of arborvitaes to prevent deer browsing. Those arborvitaes are completely encircled in a fence. The arborvitae's main purpose is to screen the adjacent condo development just to the south. Along Peace Avenue, we're taking a really proactive approach to screening, which we do quite often. If you're starting on the roadway turns into grass, and then a large planting of nepeta, which looks like lavender. Rising out of the nepeta or lavender are native redbud trees to create that small understory canopy. Above the redbud trees are native Nyssa, Clavatica tupelo tree, red in the fall, Cercis yellow in the fall. Just beyond that, a decorative white three-rail fence, and just behind the fence, a heavy hedgerow of our native American holly. So this tiered effect really creates an improved streetscape along Peace Avenue and also four-season screening. That's the extent of the landscaping.
Commissioner Coleman?
You can't see it on this schematic, but on the plans themselves, I noticed that there are 4 residences that are sort of carved out of your land that are privately owned. I think it's toward the northwest, right? And the lighting plan had 18-foot lights. How long before the planned plantings will shield their properties from those very high lights?
Yeah, I think the engineer can talk about lighting. The one thing that I will mention is you do have a heavy woodland buffer in the wetlands within that area, and then our evergreen plantings as well. So a small little patch of spruce in this area.
So your plan is showing what you're going to add to the landscape, but it doesn't show existing trees? And you're saying that there is already a heavy canopy there?
The tree line existing.
I see, I see.
So you can see we're really slightly coming into the site.
Okay, so the trees are not limited to what shows up on the landscaping plan. There are other trees already there.
All of this is vegetated wetland.
Okay, thank you.
And that's not your property. I mean, that's vegetated wetland, but it's also, adjacent property owners.
Correct.
Yeah, Commissioner Barron.
Commissioner Coleman, I think had a question. I believe it was the lights, Pete Romano with Land Tech, all the lights have what's called cutoff shields on them, so there's no light that leaves our piece of property at all. And there'll be nothing up against the property lines, predominantly all in the parking areas.
Is the driveway lit?
No.
So and it's probably what, 200 feet?
Well, 500 feet, I think.
500?
Yeah.
500 feet, and that's not lit?
Right.
Okay. Commissioner Barrett?
Yeah, for the non-memory impaired people, the ones that are afraid they're just living there for, a place to live, but if they get out, want to walk around, could you show me where they would be walking on this property? The ones that are just afraid to go, come and go as they please, how will this landscaping plan really be, of direct benefit to them other than looking out the windows?
There is lawn area outside of the building here, as well as two outdoor courtyards, one completely enclosed. The other courtyard does have an outdoor sidewalk element of the parking and then down to a viewing area so they can view the pond.
So you can view the pond. They could walk down to the pond and see if there's any
look at the pond.
Water life on the pond.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Commissioner Corbin?
Is this on? Yes. You mentioned walking down to the pond. I mean, it looks like there's a fence all the way around the pond. Is that right?
No, there's no.
On some of these maps, there's, it looks like fence posts. They're numbered all the way around.
Those are the...
What are these things?
Those are the wetland flags.
Those are the wetland flags. Flags, oh, okay. So who has access to the conservation area?
Conservation easement area will have public access provided. We talked, at the time of the hearing, we left it with the commission to determine that, and they did want aspects of public access, so that is built into it. There are points of ingress and egress, there's a parking area, etc.
What kind of access is there to the land right now?
Difficult at best. I mean, if you're talking about getting into the wetland area, it's heavily grown.
Is there an old road that goes in there to anything?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sure.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, I have one other question going back to earlier. 156 Pease Avenue. That's not on the owned property, but it looks like the building is occupying it.
There are two tenants presently in occupancy there.
But it's in the map of the owned property, it's not included?
It is part of, right now, there are two tenants in occupancy. Subject to your approval, you know, their tendencies when the building will be demolished, but it's part of the plan.
Okay, well, I mean, if you look at your map, you see there's a cutout here for 156 Bs.
Right, no. It is a separate parcel now, but is 156 the cutout? Somebody's going forward here, Mr. Crawford is showing. I just want to make sure we're all clear on what this designates.
Right there.
Just speak up, sir.
I'm sorry. There's a separate piece of property right here, 156 Pease Avenue.
But it's also
Separate
owned.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It's not owned by a third party.
Oh, no. That's what I'm saying. And it's presently occupied as a rental, but it will be demolished and subsumed into the site.
Okay, thank you.
So, can you follow up a little bit about the conservation easement, the public access, the paths, and I think you mentioned parking? I might have misheard that. I looked at the plans. I didn't see any of that proposed. And if somebody's going to talk about that later, I don't mean to interrupt your flow.
We have not yet, we are going to provide aspects of public access, but we haven't reviewed that totally with the conservation staff yet.
Okay. Do you have a conception of what elements would be included, are to be included in that?
Yes, and I think what we can do is we can, assuming we're not going to finish tonight, which I think is a fair assumption, we can provide you with an overview of that.
Okay, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
One of the things, we're proud of the entire proposal, but we're particularly proud of the work of Michael Stein and his colleagues in terms of designing a building that we think, again, fits into being attractive, understated, and welcoming to the residents. So I'm going to have Mr. Stein present that.
Sorry about that. Good evening. For the record, my name is Michael Stein. I'm a registered professional architect. I am the principal of Stein Troost Architecture. Our office is located in Norwalk, Connecticut. Just a little brief history of our firm. We've been in business since 1987, and then I formed a partnership with Mark Troost in 97. Since then, we've done a wide variety of projects, but have had a great opportunity to specialize in assisted living and memory care. We've designed facilities in Newtown, 2 in Darien, Norwalk, Hamden, Orange, Danbury. We have on the boards now this project, a project in North Haven, 2 projects in Cape Cod. Excuse me. So for this project, our overall design objective was to create a building that recalls 19th century seaside resort. It's a shingle-style design. It has dynamic massing, distinct architectural detailing, and a very rich material palette. As you arrive, you are greeted by a 1-story wraparound porch with an exterior fireplace, which then leads to a porte-cochere and 2-story stone facade, which announces the entry to the building. The building features shingled bays and board and battened dormers, which add depth and texture to the composition. As Jason mentioned, there are 2 exterior courtyards, which are inviting for residents, provide both a secure and enjoyable outdoor experience. I've brought some samples of the materials so you can see colors.
Yeah, could you? Now, can I quickly just ask you about the materials?
Sure.
It's mentioned here that these are stone veneer, so this is, kind of like a...
This is
the
real
veneer.
stone, yeah.
But it's...
Well, it's 2 inches thick.
Thick,
and-
oh, okay,
yeah,
great.
Yeah.
And then fibrous cement shingles?
Right.
That's
So
right.
we have, the gray is the shingles, I'm sorry, the gray is the shingle, the white is the board and batten,
Batten,
right?
okay.
And then this is a charcoal fiberglass roofing shingles, and this is the standing seam metal roof, which is featured on the entry, the entry commons and the porte cochere.
Could you hand that?
He needs 2 hands.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm going to pass it around. It's feats of strength. Wow, actually. Because, the details make a difference. The renderings always look great. You want to say it? I mean, it's pretty deep. Because some of those buildings look like, kind of, they look cheesy, and the picture looks great, but that looks relatively like stone. The cultured stone can look pretty good, so I'm sorry, but I'm curious. I'll take this though, look at the inside.
Oh, real
Fibrous
stone.
cement siding. It looks exactly like a shingle, but it's made out of concrete.
But you know
It lasts pretty much forever. And it's very low maintenance. So I want to just talk a little briefly about Maplewood and the program that they operate. As I said, I've designed a lot of these facilities for several different developers. Maplewood first of all, they're top-notch. They're the Mercedes-Benz of the developer operators, and it's really important to point out that they are developer operators. So the buildings they build are meant to, they also operate. So there's a knowledge feedback there. Maplewood really provides services at 3 levels. There's standard assisted living services, which are, food, help with activities of daily living. There are memory care services, and then there's a swing unit, which is for people who are not fully developed dementia, but are on the way. And so the buildings are designed to accommodate these different uses in what we call neighborhoods. So this is the first floor plan. As I originally described, as you approach, you see this outdoor wraparound porch with a fireplace. That's the porte cochere and that 2-story stone entrance piece. You enter into what we call the commons. This is a 1-story timber framed element with, big open volume space, skylit. You can see this dormer is above this big space, this big common room. These dormers are in the chapel. So on the left is the commons. There's a bistro, which is a place for coffee or drinks before dinner. There's a living room with a big fireplace, 2 formal dining rooms, a private dining room. And then at the back end is the first level of assisted living. There are, on this floor, 28 units. They have a little, there's a little common area in that area, but, it's kind of like the prime real estate in the buildings, the first floor units, and those are always dedicated to the assisted living. The second floor is the memory care floor. It is a contained unit, safe. Residents are not allowed to wander outside the building. It has all the common functions of the first floor. There's a dining room, there's a library, there's 2 living rooms, and there's a large outdoor porch. It's a 2,500 square foot porch with trellises and landscaping, situated to have the great view of the pond and the wetlands system. So there are 32 units on this floor. And then on the third floor is the mix. This end of the plan is the swing unit. They call it, the nomenclature here is called tides. The balance of the floor plan has additional assisted living units. The Tides unit does have a living room, has a library, so that at night, that is a contained unit, but during the day, it's not. So all told, I think the statistics are, it's a 91,000 square foot building. There are 98 units. It complies with setbacks, building height. I think one other exhibit is probably important to show. This is the roof plan. And the reason I'm showing this is because we take great care in concealing mechanical equipment. There's no visible mechanical equipment from the ground. The design has a kind of a cutout on the roof where these rooftop units are placed. I guess that's my presentation. I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Yes. Commissioner Mcclellan.
Just to be clear, all the parking is surface, right? There's no garage?
Correct.
There's no basement level?
Correct. Yeah, there's no basement in the building.
Anyone else?
Thank you.
Oh, that's true.
We've obviously submitted a traffic impact analysis prepared by Mcclellan and McBroom. Neil Olinsky's here tonight to review that with you. From a layman's perspective, I will say, having had the good fortune, I guess, to be doing a lot of these around the state over the last 2 or 3 years, there is no use that I've come across in 40-some years of practice in land use that is a less impacting use from a traffic perspective than assisted living facilities. The unfortunate, or maybe fortunate fact is, our average resident is 86 to 87 years old. So not a lot of them drive, and the other truly unfortunate thing is they've outlived many of their friends and companions and even family members. So again, it gets back to my, I guess, overall theme here is that very seldom are we presented with applications that I think comprise such a win-win-win context. But when you consider we have 27 acres of property sitting here in Southport, to look at this particular proposal, forgetting the environmental, forgetting the need, but looking at it just from a traffic perspective, it is a unique win-win. So I asked Mr. Olinsky to kind of overview the traffic report.
Hello, everyone. For the record, Neil Olinsky with Mcclellan and McBroom. We worked on the traffic study of the proposed development. As Attorney Fallon mentioned, it's really not a major traffic generator. Basically, traffic study, standard methodology, we look at how much new traffic we expect the development, the assisted living facility would generate, and then we assess whether or not the new traffic is going to have an impact to basically the capacity of the existing roadway system. So one of the first things we did was we looked at national data published by the Institute of Transportation Engineers, statistical data on trip generation, and the data indicates that a development of this size, I think it's going to have approximately 104 beds. Most of the units are going to be singles, there'll be a couple doubles. 104 beds, using that as one of the variables. Expecting during the busiest hour during the morning, basically the morning peak hour, approximately 20 entering trips, vehicle trips, and 5 exiting trips. During the afternoon peak hour, on the order of 20 exiting and 15 entering trips on a typical day. Mostly employees, some visitors as well, shift changes, largely employee traffic. So then we counted existing traffic at 2 intersections near the site, 2 nearest intersections, Mill Hill Terrace and Mill Hill Road, and Mill Hill Terrace at Woodrow Avenue and Acorn. We counted those in January. We then looked at what the roadway traffic out there would look like in the near future, just before the new development gets built and open. Based on advice from the Connecticut Department of Transportation, we bumped up the existing traffic volumes a slight amount. Then we added on the new traffic that we believe will be generated by the proposed development. And we looked at how these intersections are expected to operate both with and without the new development's traffic. And we found that there are no expected changes to levels of service. In the future, these intersections are expected to continue to operate much like they do today. During peak hours, we're talking about levels of service A and B. It's just not a whole lot of traffic out there, and we're not adding a whole lot of traffic at all. From a traffic impact standpoint, there really is no traffic impact. Most of the traffic, like I said, we expect to be employees. A lot of it, a good amount, slightly more than the majority, we think is going to be oriented to and from the highway. Coming up Woodward during the morning peak hour, for example, half of the traffic, maybe 10 of the 20 trips might be coming off the highway, for instance, making its way up Woodrow onto Mill Hill Terrace and then turning right into the site. The site drive is approximately here. The way the ramps are situated, some of the traffic heading back north, for instance, might go down Woodrow. Some may also be inclined to use the back way out to Bronson Road, Mill Hill Terrace to Mill Hill Road, down to Bronson, to hop on a ramp there. Other than that, we looked at the exiting point for motorists at the new site driveway to Mill Hill Terrace. We looked at what the sight lines are, really what we should have based on the speeds out there and based on DOT guidelines. We collected travel speed data on Mill Hill Terrace in January as well as in 2014. It's posted for 25 miles per hour. 85th percentile speeds are what we collected, 41 miles per hour.
So the 85th percentile of actual speed on Mill Hill Road
Correct.
is 41 miles an hour?
So people are traveling quite fast out there. But even still, based on the DOT's guidelines, which is it's a range of guidelines based on approaching travel speeds, you're going to need, based on the guidelines, sight distances, intersection sight distances of 456 feet in both directions. In order to get that, there's going to need to be some clearing of vegetation, ground vegetation, low-hanging branches along the frontage on the site, to some extent within the right-of-way, and we're going to need to secure an easement, which I believe we've done, to look across this portion of that property.
Sorry, did you say you're going to need to secure a piece of land from another party?
An aerial trespass easement, which...
We have that. We'll submit that. That easement has already been granted. It's a piece of property, an adjacent piece of property that's owned by the estate.
Okay.
And we've drawn the easement. We can make it part of your record. It's in place.
Okay, you'll please do that.
Yes.
So we're going to work with the town's tree warden to basically hammer out the details about the clearing to achieve the site distances that we'll need.
So what's the minimum required? 456?
456 feet to meet the 85th percentile speed.
And with the easement and the vegetation clearing, what are your sight lines?
That 456.
So you've got it on the number?
Well, we could probably get a little bit more looking in this direction because we have all this frontage over here, which we could clear. We could do some additional clearing. You could probably get an extra 50 feet, give or take.
Looks like it goes to the end of the road there. It looks like it goes through the road and you're going into the right-of-way on the opposite side of Mill Hill Terrace.
The road, the north curb line is here, and this is the road is over here.
Yes.
So if this point right here,
yes,
it got shifted further down, this straight line would go to, approximately here. Does that make sense? We have the ability to just clear our frontage. Looking in the other direction, the other property line we've just fallen short of, so we're not going to be seeking an easement from these folks.
So on the other side, you're at 456?
We're at 456, looking to the west. Looking to the east, we could probably get upwards of 500.
Please, Commissioner Barrett.
I'm really asking the same question, because the chairman asked my question, but I didn't
I
fully understand
apologize.
the answer. We usually see these, again, presented as what's the required site distance at the speeds. You're saying the required site distance is 456 feet in either
Right.
direction.
Correct. We're going to get that.
At 40, but the we're going to get that is what we're usually we hear, it's just like parking, required 456. The sightline distance based on the profiles looking both directions are 512 or 600 or something. We're not seeing that here, we're just saying we're going to get that. Just by virtue of clearing the frontage, you're going to get that? I mean, how do we see that you're going to get that? I don't really follow that.
Well, we can provide that. I mean, if you want, we can provide you with a surveyed site.
Surveyed sightlines, yeah, that's what
I mean, that's, again, we're going to have somewhat of a hiatus here.
Yeah.
And we can certainly, but we've looked at that to ensure that the recommendations that are to meet compliance are as shown here. And if you want greater detail in terms of the actual clearing that we will do, a survey, we can show you that. So that how we will clear sightlines.
Yeah, right. Mr. Linsky just answered the question. Usually we say like, well, what do you have? And they say a number, and he said, well, we can get there. So I just was just trying.
Well, right now, there's vegetation in the way, but once
It's
we
hard
clear
to judge
that...
with the vegetation in the way then, or it's hard to?
If you look at the traffic report, you'll see as you see, one of the recommendations is that we will clear, that's why we went out and we got the easement. But I understand what the commission would like to see is perhaps a surveyed sightline.
Yep.
So you can see where the vegetation will be removed.
Yeah.
So
Yep,
you'll know that.
and the lines, and we want to see a number, well, what is required and what you are showing to provide, okay? Now, I reviewed all the papers, but I didn't see this document in our packet. I don't recall seeing it. Is it part of the traffic
This
report?
document?
Yeah.
I do not believe it was attached to the traffic study. In fact, it was actually prepared by Hunter Gregory.
I don't know.
So I'm not sure if it was...
Was that
been
part of
submitted.
was that submitted?
I don't believe it was.
Yeah, because
we'll get
I'm
it
looking
to
at
you.
that for the first time.
Yeah, and we'll put that, obviously it's in the record now. That is a survey, just so the record's clear, that's a survey prepared by the Huntington Company, and it will be them that will go to give you greater detail in terms of where the clearing will occur.
Walter Jost did that?
Either Walter Jost or somebody from his office.
Right, okay. Well, okay.
I mean, this is-
Do you have copies of that?
We'll certainly get them.
Okay. Well, you don't have one tonight.
Well, normally I don't leave exhibits with staff, but I think I will leave this one tonight since it's, but
Well, if that's the only one, that's here, then it needs to be left. It needs to be stamped in.
We'll do that. But this is his sightline survey. And what I'm understanding that the commission would like to see is documentation of where the clearing will occur.
Yeah.
Because this is the 456 that we have to meet. And so this is his survey, sightline survey, showing the line of sight for the 456. So what I think the commission wants to see, just so I'm clear, is where the clearing will occur to make that sightline.
I mean, in some ways, yes, but, yeah, I'm sorry, Attorney Fallon, he's referring to you, yeah. So in some ways, yes, but in other ways, not so much, because typically the sight lines are measured at that point when you're at the edge, right? And then you're going out into the street, not necessarily just cutting as far back as you need to go in order to get as much distance as you need, but I would expect that the line was going to be drawn, down Mill Hill Terrace. And if you run into the other side of the road, I'm not sure that you get where you need to be. So
We're
that's...
told we do, but we'll document that.
Right. Okay? All right. Yeah, well, and as Commissioner Leslie just mentioned, Laura Pooley needs to review your sightlines as well. And from what I'm understanding from this, that's not been submitted for review by engineering as of yet. Okay. So can you just say correct in the microphone so we have that?
Correct.
Thank you.
And we will see that that is done.
Thank you. That's a critical aspect.
Any other questions at this point for
Or I do. Is he finished with his presentation?
I am.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions? All right. So, Commissioner Francis.
What are the shift times and the number of staff per shift? You may not be the right person for this.
I don't have that exact information.
Number of shift times and the total amount of people per shift. Somebody needs to come to the microphone and identify themselves.
Good evening, I'm Thomas Gaston, I'm the Executive Vice President, Maplewood Senior Living. The shift times are similar to hospitals, so we run 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., 3 p.m. to 11 p.m., and then the overnight is from 11 to 7.
I'm sorry, could you just go through the 7 a.m.
7 a to 3
p.m.?
p, 3 p to 11 p, and the overnight is 11 p to back to 7 a.m. And of a building this size, in terms of total employees in the building, it's roughly 30, 35 employees during the daytime. It cuts back on the afternoon shift, which is 3 to 11, probably about 15 employees, and then typically 5 to 6 employees on the overnight shift.
Okay. So, thank you. Yeah, it's actually, it's an interesting point, because with 30 to 35 employees coming in for the 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. shift, wouldn't you expect each of them, and this is for the traffic engineer, wouldn't you expect each of them to be in a car?
The one thing I did want to clarify, the folks that come in from that 7A to 3P shift, they do come in at different times. There's a combination of care staff that have to be in at 7 a.m., which would make up probably about 18 to 20 folks with kitchen, and then we have our whole administrative staff, which would be bookkeeper, executive director, and folks who would probably show up around 9 a.m. So it's staged. That particular shift is more staged.
So the 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. are the healthcare, the healthcare people, and and then you do have a certain subset of that, which are 9 to 5, coming in sort of during business hours, administrative, and so forth.
That's correct.
Right. So, very good. What time does the Mill Hill School, this is for the traffic engineer, what time does Mill Hill School get out in the afternoons?
Get out 3:30, I believe.
3:30?
3:25, sorry,
3:45? Okay.
3:25.
So we have a little bit of a split there.
And when we looked at the traffic, the peak hour in the afternoon, we did look at that.
Yeah.
We did include that, I believe, in the peak hour. I think we looked at, let me just double check.
What was the peak hour in your report?
It was, I believe, it was 3:20, 3, let me just double check. Yes, it was 2:45 to 3:45.
And was that intended to capture the school ingress and egress?
Correct, the school traffic passing by the site on Mill Hill Terrace.
This school, you were probably here for the earlier presentation on Holland Hill, talking about how many of the kids walk to school. It's a neighborhood school. You know, this is a residential area. Mill Hill School is very similar. You know, during the winter months, a lot of those kids are on bus routes because many of the streets don't have sidewalks, but in the warmer weather, most of those kids who live really close, who otherwise ride the bus in the winter, walk to school. And if you're there in the mornings and in the afternoons, there's a lot of pedestrians and parents and kids on bikes and things like that. Did you look at pedestrian flow at all, and how what the impact of the site and the traffic would be on the pedestrians in the area?
Well, it's included in the analysis that we did at the intersections. I know we're going to still be showing or having a sidewalk along the site frontage.
Well, there's a sidewalk there now. That's where the kids walk, right?
Correct, and I believe there's going to remain a sidewalk.
Okay. So did you assess any impact on the pedestrian traffic? I mean, not to belabor the point, I understand that the study was about an assisted living facility, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the abstract. This is an assisted living facility that is literally next to an elementary school, to which a fair amount of the students are walking and riding their bikes to school. So my question is whether you looked at or assessed or, you know, took account of that aspect of this facility in this environment?
Well, it's all the vehicle traffic and pedestrian traffic is taken into account with the level of service analysis, different modes, and that has been taken into account. We're still getting levels of service A and B.
Level of service relates to the delay that a
car.
a vehicle would be
So,
at a stop sign.
If you're asking about pedestrian level of service, we have not specifically looked at that.
Not level of service, I'm talking about safety, I'm talking about the impact of this facility, this build, in this neighborhood, being adjacent to a school where a lot of kids ride their bikes and walk to school.
I think my response to that on behalf of the applicant would be that you have the data in terms of the traffic generation associated with the proposed use during peak times, including the times of dismissal. Our belief is those numbers for this use are exceedingly benign. Obviously, if you had a different kind of use where you were seeing peak time ingress and egress in the 90s, 100s, you might say, my God, and I would understand that. So I think the best way, Mr. Chairman, we can answer your question is, your point is well taken, that's a sensitivity this commission should have, but we think that when you will review the detailed traffic count data, you'll say, 5 in, 20 out, that's about as good as we could do on a 27-acre site.
And that's a great answer. Does the traffic engineer think that way too?
We do, and we're still providing a sidewalk along the site frontage. Beyond that, we could work in crosswalks across the site driveway, things of that nature. But good to go further beyond our site. I know there's crosswalks at the intersection of Mill Hill Terrace.
Yeah,
Road
there
as
are.
well.
And that's a great point, and I appreciate that. Crosswalk there, is there any sort of control planned at the entrance there? So you just mentioned a crosswalk or some sort of pedestrian kind of.
Stop sign on the way exit.
Is there a stop sign?
Stop sign exiting the site.
There is?
For vehicles, there
Okay.
will be.
And like a bar or something like that?
There's a stop bar.
Yeah.
We'll get you a better plan. It shows the pavement markings. It's pretty typical to have a stop bar and a stop sign.
So I was looking at the data in the back of your report and the traffic counts and collections. Most of those, unfortunately, the hole punch kind of cut off some of the dates. I presume all those are January 19, 2016?
Which page are you looking at? Sorry.
These are all the
all
the data charts in the back, for example, if you go like 4 or 5 pages back, from the back, the page on the right has the date in the upper right-hand corner. It says January 19, 2016.
Correct.
The page on the left, the date is actually punched out.
Oh,
Just from the...
It's the same date.
So they're all, if it's January 19th, they're all 2016?
They're all 2016, that's correct.
So, early in the report, like at page 2, you state that traffic volume data was collected from Mill Hill Terrace adjacent to the site from March 27, 2014 to April 2nd, 2014, and on January 21, 2016. So I didn't see any of the data on the counts from March 27 to April 2nd.
So that was part of the traffic volume and speed count of vehicles passing one point along the road.
Right.
As opposed to an intersection turning movement count with all the movements. That we collected back in 2014 and we recollected again in January.
Right.
I believe that data is included earlier on in the appendix.
Could you just point out to me where that data is separately?
So we use a sub-consultant called Connecticut Counts, LLC.
Yep. Got it. So those charts, those are not dated, which is what was confusing.
There's a date on the far left column, 24 March 2014.
Got it.
And subsequent pages, 18th of January 2016.
I see that now. Excellent. So this is what measured from one point in time, just car counts on Mill Hill Terrace and average speed.
Average and 85th percentile speeds.
And then in January 2016, you actually did turning counts and all those other kinds of data
At the
points.
two study intersections, as well as the site driveway.
Would it be
Two study intersections. We didn't count the site driveway because it doesn't exist.
Would it be significant for that to have occurred on a different date, like in the spring or in the fall or something like that? I mean, I have heard, and I can't cite to it at the moment, but that traffic data should be collected over the course of a period of time in like 2 or 3 different intervals so that you're capturing a cross-section of activity.
Correct. Well, traffic does fluctuate to a certain extent across different months of the year. To get traffic counts at several different times of the year, it ends up being really cost prohibitive to the project. We could certainly do it. We could take an average of everything. The roadway traffic out there is so low, though, we don't think any increase, even if, we don't know if there will be, but if there is a slight amount of increase, say, in the springtime as opposed to January, we don't think it's going to change our findings. That is certainly something we could look at, the Commission would like.
Okay. Are you aware of any rule of thumb? I don't know if it's a rule of thumb or citation or what have you, which kind of provides a baseline where there should be data accumulated from a minimum of 2 days or 3 days, or is 1 day sufficient? From the IT?
You usually see when you do a traffic, like intersection turning movement counts, you usually just see a snapshot of 1 day. When it becomes a big issue is saying in certain areas of the state where you say down in Mystic where there's a lot of seasonal traffic, much higher traffic volumes in the summer compared to the winter, you tend to see people counting a couple times or waiting to count and collect data until the summer. Not so much in other areas of the state. I don't think there's a big seasonal
Here,
change
you don't perceive a need to have a count at different times of the year?
No. Nope.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions? Thank you very much.
Just want to cover a few things by way of a brief summary. First of all, I think it's important that we keep in mind that you have standards here with regard to your special exception uses. I just want to briefly review those. First of all, section 27.4.9 are your standards with respect to assisted living facilities, and clearly we are compliant with all of those. You also have standards for section 27.4, general standards for special exception uses, and I think they're particularly instructive here, so I'm going to take a minute just to talk about them. Section 27.4.1 says that the proposed low intensity, if you look at section 27.4.1, we would submit to you that the proposed low intensity use of this particular property located on 27 acres certainly will not have any adverse impacts on the use or value of adjacent property. You've heard testimony with regard to the traffic. You've heard testimony with regard to the landscaping plan. Indeed, this permitted special exception use is consistent, I would point out, with the area, which includes residential use, obviously a multifamily use by way of the condo, a school use, as we've talked about today, a nursing home, certain proximity to I-95, and even the retail post road area. So I think clearly we've established that standard. We believe that this use also will have a very positive impact on the town's tax base with little demand upon our municipal services. With regard to section 27.42, we have received the review of the fire marshal with regard to fire protection, so I think that standard is satisfied. You've heard the testimony today with regard to the traffic analysis, and we hope you will agree that your standards there in terms of avoidance of congestion or safety issues in the public right-of-ways and streets has been met. Indeed, as I pointed out before, with our average age of residents being 86 or 87, it seems this is a very particularly low-intensity utilization of this large piece of property as a matter of traffic generation. Also, as referenced in the application, Certainly, we are in conformity with the master plan, the town plan of conservation and development. Indeed, as I pointed out in my material, and I may have failed to mention, there's specific reference in the town plan of conservation and development, section 3.3.11, establishes housing as a goal and says, I quote, "Housing for senior citizens to include innovative and supportive options such as assisted living." So I think we've met the technical standards of the regulations. To talk a little more briefly, but I don't want to jump ahead, but I know we're going into the public portion of this. And I want to just make sure that I put on the record, I believe you've received tonight an intervention petition.
I have not seen that yet.
It's certainly under section 22A19 of the Connecticut General Statutes. Anybody has the right in any administrative proceeding to intervene in order to claim that what is being proposed is going to unreasonably impair the air, water, or other natural resources of the state. I recognize that. In looking at the intervention that's been filed this evening, it is hauntingly familiar because we spent 4 nights in front of the Inland Wetlands Agency reviewing this, it seems to me, almost identical document. And when you read through it, and I won't, it's replete with concerns about wetland flags. I've just picked it up now. Wetlands flag 667, watercross road crossings, rain gardens, etc. And that brings me to the point I want to make, and I know the commission is aware of. I'm going to present the commission through your planner. It's a lengthy decision, but I'll highlight it, and I know your town attorney was here earlier. It's a case of Nazardo versus the State Traffic Commission. It's a Connecticut Supreme Court case. And what Nazardo stands for is, and I quote, "When a petition is filed under section 22A19, the environmental issues which can be considered by the agency are limited to those within the jurisdiction of that particular agency." So, to the extent that it would appear that there may be an intent by the intervener to burden you with 4 nights of hearings talking about wetlands, you do have some protective recourse here. Indeed, you have instructive authority from the Supreme Court. Because the principal dispute, when you look at the language here, it is as I just read it, and that is the Supreme Court has indicated that a 22A19 environmental intervention petition does not expand your jurisdiction or require you to undertake review of matters not within your purview. I quote again from the Supreme Court, section 22A19 is not intended to expand the jurisdictional authority of an administrative body whenever an intervener raises environmental issues. We've recently just heard that that invocation of the act is not an open sesame for standing to raise environmental claims with regard to matters outside the scope of the commission. So without trying to in any way inhibit anyone's right to speak to you tonight and tomorrow night or whatever nights we're back here, I do not think, and I hope you'll review Nazardo. If you have questions, ask Attorney Lesser, because this is not open season again. And it should not be you that is burdened with rehearing a matter that was heard in their jurisdiction over 4 nights or more by the Inland Wetlands Agency before they unanimously approved the application and unanimously rejected the intervention.
Do you have a cite for that case, please?
Pardon? Yes, I'm sorry. I do. I would have brought copies for you, but it's Nazardo versus State Traffic Commission, 259 Connecticut 131, a 2002 Supreme Court case.
Thank you.
It's also, if it's easier for you, 788 Atlantic 2nd, 1158.
I just want to ask a question. Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question, Counsel?
Yes, yes,
I
please.
just want to clarify the reasoning here, Mr. Fallon. I appreciate you wanting to relieve us of additional time and hearings, but you know what? Our rates are always the same, free, so don't worry about it.
Okay.
But my question is more, what I'm trying to understand is, because I'll look at the case, Joe's going to make copies and stuff. I'm not an attorney, but I think I can understand the reasoning. Are you saying that, not that we don't have to do it because it's already been dealt with at the Wetlands Commission level, or are you saying that if we entertain this information, that we can't use it as a basis for denial?
I am saying that with the intervention being now filed,
Right,
you're going to have to make two decisions ultimately.
right,
You're going to have to act on the intervention.
right.
Motion, as essentially a motion to intervene, and whether the filing satisfies the criteria
Oh, okay,
under
so-
the statute.
Right.
Because the intervener
To
has the
become a party.
burden of establishing
Fair enough.
whatever. So that's one.
Right, that's a
And-
legal
and-
issue,
And
but
then
I'm
the
thinking more...
second thing you're going to have to act
This is
on
right.
is the approval of the special exception or not.
Right, right.
What the Nazardo case says is that in any proceeding, administrative proceeding, somebody can file a 22A19 intervention,
Yes.
okay? But it also says that by just doing that,
Yeah.
that doesn't expand your jurisdiction so that you have to, again, start retrying issues in terms of wetlands and crossing. Let's suppose that, and I don't mean to get too far into this, but suppose
Right.
somebody wants to talk to you about air pollution because of their concern about traffic
Now,
in your
and-
jurisdiction.
So, many of your points are well taken, some not so well. Do you have an objection to the motion to intervene?
Oh, no, I think he has an absolute right to intervene.
Very well.
Absolute right to intervene.
Very well.
I don't think you can reject his intervention. You'll just ultimately have to find whether the intervener has met his burden of proving the allegations. All I'm asking you is, I note on a very cursory review, most of the allegations seem totally repetitive of wetlands-related issues, and that's where Nazardo becomes pertinent.
Right, and so you have a choice now. I mean, you can, now that you've seen this, you're in your application, your presentation, you can address this if you like. Now, he has an opportunity
Right.
to present his
Right.
Intervention arguments, and you'll have an opportunity to rebut those.
Right,
you
and
know,
that's,
in your
and I
rebuttal.
really haven't reviewed this yet. I've literally took the most cursory review of it, but I'm surprised to see it so repetitively, substantially wetland-based, and that's the only reason I brought this up now. Certainly, at the appropriate time, I'll respond to any intervention claims that I think are relevant to the jurisdiction here, but I'm just hopeful that the commission will avail itself of the protection that Nazardo provides you, so you don't spend a lot of time talking about Wetlands 5 and crossing this and that. I mean, you'll want to look at Nazardo, you may want to talk to your director, your town attorney, but it doesn't give him a free ride to retry the case he's already tried and lost in wetlands. So, in conclusion, and starting, probably what's going to be a fairly long session, this is a great application. It truly is. I know I'm supposed to say that because I'm here, and I've never stood in front of you and said, hey, this is a bad application. But with all the credibility I can muster, you've got a situation here where you've got 27 acres of property.
Sorry, excuse me.
No, that's fine. I just didn't want to interrupt you again. You have a situation here where we've got 27 acres of property that's always been whispered in play, this or that, what's going to go there, this or that. And along comes a bona fide local but national developer with an impeccable track record. They want to put a permitted use on 27 acres, disturbing approximately 5 acres of it, putting in perpetuity 15 acres as total open space, addressing tax base issues, which is nice, not having impact in terms of municipal services, the most benign use of the property from a traffic perspective that we can ever find, and also addressing something. How many of you know someone in your family or a friend who's living with this situation right now and is being torn by the fact that either if they're lucky enough, they've got their mom or their dad up in Monroe or down in Stamford, or if they're not lucky enough, they're on a waiting list someplace to get him or her in there. And I really mean what I say. This is a win-win-win. Everybody's entitled to their opinion, but in the age we live in, it's amazing to me that this isn't being totally embraced by every facet of the community, because it's a wonderful planning decision to an important piece of property in the town. And we'll look forward to talking with you further as the evening progresses.
Thank you. Before you sit down, I actually thought of something I wanted to ask the traffic engineer
Sure.
about.
Neil?
So, thanks, and sorry I forgot to ask you this when you were up.
No problem.
But earlier in the presentation, we heard some commentary about, I think Commissioner Alessi asked, about creating a second entrance off of Pease
Off of
Avenue.
Pease, mhm.
At at the corner there. I guess it would look sort of like a T-stop, right, at the top of Pease Avenue. And it seems intuitive on its face. What sort of impact would that have on traffic flow if that were the way the site was designed with the...
Well, we haven't really studied it, to be honest, because we're not proposing it. The traffic volumes coming, we analyzed this intersection, traffic volumes on these roads, even less. The traffic out there now really along Pease, and we didn't have an impact at the Woodrow intersection. I don't think we would have an impact on Pease from a traffic volume standpoint.
Okay.
Quite frankly, I think we work fine. I think the development will be fine with the single regular access out from Mill Hill Terrace.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Fallon. So I'll turn it over to the public comment period now. Is there anyone, member of the public that wishes to be heard? And in fact, should I probably call? Yeah? Yeah. So it's a little bit out of the ordinary, but David Rosenstein, the filer of the petition to intervene, is now akin to a party in the proceedings, so we'll invite you up first.
Good evening. My name is Dave Rosenstein. I live at 340 Acorn Lane in Southport. For the record, I was one of the interveners, as Mr. Fallon indicated, before the Inland Wetlands Agency. On both applications that were submitted, the first one, which was rejected, and then the second one, as Mr. Fallon, was approved. I would note that the conservation staff administrator recommended actual disapproval of both applications on the two occasions, just so that the record is clear. But I don't disagree with the assessment that it was unanimously approved. I'm not here, but maybe as a point of procedure, I should just ask whether this agency has approved my intervention at this time.
Inasmuch as I have the authority to grant or deny your intervention, there being no objection from the applicant to your petition to intervene as a procedural matter, I am considering you an intervener.
Okay.
All right?
And as I understand my status as an intervener, I would be allowed to ask questions of any of the individuals that Mr. Fallon has.
You are entitled to cross-examine witnesses.
Okay.
I would ask that if you do so, you keep your examination germane to the issues before us.
So
we heard some argument earlier about the metes and bounds of our jurisdiction and the issues that are in front of us, and I would just ask that you respect that.
Certainly. So really, I'm here both in the capacity as an intervener with respect to the environmental concerns that I have with regards to this proposed development, and then as a member of the public to the larger non-environmental issues. So that would be traffic and things and residential property values and aesthetics and things like that. So obviously, there may be a subsequent opportunity that I would hope for where I would have as any member of the public, an opportunity to address those in addition to the environmental concerns. But I am not here to really re-argue the number of sessions that were held before Inland Wetlands Agency. Their jurisdiction is exactly wetlands and watercourses. And so that body looked at those issues, addressed them, voted on them. But there's other aspects of this property that are not wetlands and watercourses, where there are valid environmental concerns, which would be the appropriate jurisdiction of this body. In fact, the Inland Wetlands Agency was very clear as to what they were willing to address and what they weren't willing to address from an environmental impact and assessment of the property, and was very focused and limited to dealing with wetlands and watercourses. So if you look at my notice of intervention, and the first 2 pages really just go over a description of the property and the importance of the property in the context of the larger Sasko Brook watershed. But when you get down to page 3, specifically paragraph N, my notice of intervention talks about the fact that there was evidence that was presented to Inland Wetlands Agency regarding years of dumping of large amounts of debris on the site. Not necessarily on the site in the wetlands and watercourse areas, but throughout the entire site. Now, we have a witness who testified at that proceeding, Inland Wetlands hearings, with direct evidence of the dumping, because he's a neighbor immediately adjacent to the property, and he's here again tonight, and he's prepared to testify as to the dumping that occurred and the fill that was deposited on the site, as well as oil barrels and debris, stoves, refrigerator, demolition debris. Now, in the context of the Inland Wetlands Agency hearing, there was a decision by the Inland Wetlands Agency that the applicant needed to conduct Phase 2 testing in very limited areas on the site, which they did. But they did not conduct broader Phase 2 testing in the non-wetland watercourse areas. In fact, in the testing that they did do, which I recall, from recollection, was approximately 29 sites, either through hand borings, test pits, or various types of monitoring wells, they found 36% of the sites tested had contaminants that exceeded either the residential direct exposure criteria levels for various contaminants, or the surface water or groundwater protection criteria. Okay. So there are issues of broader contamination outside wetlands and agency on this property that are concerns to not only myself, but the neighbors, that there has not been testing on. So I will pass out to you a chart of the limited testing that was done and what that revealed. There's been no testing at all in Lot 3, and I don't have the lot lines here, but Lot 3 is the lot that is...
Got the pond in it.
It's the other side of the pond adjacent to 95.
Okay.
There's been no discussion as to the proposed development of Lot 3. We've heard nothing about Lot 3, and there's been no testing done on Lot 3. Yet 36% of the sites that were tested revealed contaminants, and I'll this is from their experts' report.
You can just put the stack there, we'll take one and pass it down.
Yeah.
Okay? That'll be easier.
Thank you.
So let me just ask you a threshold question.
Sure.
So if there's no construction or proposal being a part of this application on Lot 3, why is your argument about testing on Lot 3 relevant?
Because there is the potential of future development of Lot 3. They've carved out Lot 3 for future use.
How does that relate to the application that's in front of us?
Well, Lot 3 is not the only lot on the property. There was no testing done there, and there was limited testing done in all of the other lots as well. So,
Can we follow?
Yeah, no, please, I
sorry,
mean, he's an intervener, he's a party.
Right, so
He's, now he gets to be questioned by us.
Great, I appreciate it. So you said there were 27 test sites?
approximately, I believe, 29 test sites. Of
And
the
Lot
20
3 had none of them?
And Lot 3 had none of them.
Now, this is a 27-acre property.
Correct.
And looking, I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. I'm going to guess that Lot 3 is at most maybe 5 acres out of the 27. Would that be a good guess? Do you know the exact numbers?
I don't know the exact
Does Mr. Fallon know how big Lot 3 is? Okay, so 24 acres, 29 test locations on 24 acres? That's correct?
Right.
Okay, so 29 either, because the only reason I mention this is in my work, where I work, we acquire properties, and actually that doesn't sound like that few a number of locations for a 23-acre site.
Sounds
It's almost
like a lot.
that sounds like a lot, actually.
Yeah.
So I don't know what case you're making there, but before you go there, I want to go on the other side of this real quick.
I'm getting to the remediation.
And I will. I hear you, and I want to hear that out. But I just want to say for that surprises me. But was there any kind of a written order issued or a written advisory? For example, we get staff reports prior to decisions that lay out, for example, key issues that we may want to consider prior to a decision. Now, they don't act as disapproval or approval, but they give us some sense of direction and assist us in trying to come to a clear conclusion. Did the staff from Inland Wetlands provide a written direction that is available for us to look at when they, because I know we have had other cases in which staff at Inland Wetlands has expressed a divergent view with the final voting of the commission there.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any kind of written materials at all that reflect their opinions that you said that they had, they essentially disapproved of the, is there anything in writing that would be something we could look at?
Well, I think after the first disapproval of the initial application, it was as part of that order that they recommended that Phase 2 testing be done in conjunction with the resubmission of the application. So as part of their resubmission, the second time before Inland Wetlands, Hygienics, which was the Hygienics Inc., which was the company that performed this testing, I think the gentleman's name was Art Morris, had prepared this written report, which was submitted, which revealed these results from these test sites.
Right, well, I guess I didn't express my question clearly, I apologize. I'm not asking about what the conclusions of the report was, and we're going to drill down and understand that report better. I just had that one question about how many sites on 27 or 26, whatever, 24 acres. I'm asking you, was there a report from our conservation director, any written report from our conservation director that said, it is in my view, you not approve this? Is there something I can look at that will say that? And it will give the reason.
Annette Jacobson, two reports, both recommended denial. Okay. In the second report, which was based upon the application that contained, in part, the results from the testing, she noted that there was contaminants, which are mentioned on this chart, which had exceeded certain of the criteria levels and addressed the need for remediation. One of the issues of concern is that hygienics report did not discuss at all the way in which these contaminants would be remediated. They said we would remediate these. There are upwards, as we presented before Inland Wetlands, of 30 different types of approximately of forms of remediation for contaminants.
I'm going to interrupt you for a second.
Sure.
I think you just said that the applicant here has made a commitment through wetlands to remediate the site.
They said that they would remediate. They did not describe the method of remediation.
Well, okay, but they've committed to remediate
some
the
of
site.
these.
No.
That's different, because we have a full conservation department, engineering department, in town hall that will monitor this. So you can't say you're just going to throw out there that you don't like the way they're going to remediate the soil.
I did not see that in my review of the papers.
I'm looking at the code enforcement minutes, and you know, all it said here was, you know.
That was going to be my next question, but I appreciate that.
Could I just-
I appreciate that.
Can I just finish the last, this about Jacobson, did Ms. Jacobs, is her report part of your submission then, the report that she made as a staffer to Conservation, are you presenting that to us so we can
I
review
can't
it?
present that.
You haven't?
I don't have it with me this evening. There were 2 reports recommending denial. I assume that you had all of those materials.
I don't, okay.
If that was an incorrect assumption on my part, I apologize. Certainly, you know, I can make that.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you, Commissioner Kennedy.
My question's
Commissioner
about evidence also, Attorney Rosenstein, right?
Yes.
Because also, if something is not in our package, and we don't always get the, you know, sometimes the applicant presents our conservation approval. I have not seen that. My other question specifically on this document, you or somebody that worked prepared this document?
Right, based upon the hygienics report that was
Right.
prepared by the applicant.
So all the reds and yellows you provided.
Correct.
And this references
Correct.
pages in the hygienics report, but the hygienics report is not part of this application either,
No.
to my
Okay.
knowledge.
No.
So,
And
you know,
we
we
just
can't see
checked.
the context of that, what this is.
And we just checked with staff. We do not have a copy of the inland wetlands approval in the file that's here.
Sure.
And I'll have to leave it to Mr. Devanchek to make copies. It also has just a clear attachment of report for approval. So I'll offer.
Mr. Fallon, does it include the report by Ms. Jacobson?
It does not.
Okay.
The final.
Can we get that through your office, or, assume, okay, great.
My issue here, Mr. Chair, is that, you know, this report that he's presenting, it's about a portion of a report. We don't know what else the report says, and it could be like incidental, or, I see the words above water protection criteria levels, yes, but there's just not a lot of context for it,
So-
you know.
You can be
So-
sure we'll have Mr. Morris here before these proceedings close. And then you
Okay,
can.
this is not appropriate.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just wondered about the context of this report, that's all I was asking.
And those are fair, very, very fair points, and I think on balance, it's up to us, you know, to consider the evidence that we received as part of the record, the testimony that we have, the arguments that we have, and if this is insufficient, then it is what it is. We're gonna get a copy of the inland wetlands permit. We're gonna get a copy of Annette Jacobson's report.
2 reports.
Well, the one report that I think is germane and relevant that I'm asking for is the one that is, that supports the approval of this application by inland wetlands. Conditional approval, application number 2014-15-14. So if you want to make another report a part of this record, then you've got to do that, okay? I still would like to know how this is relevant to the application that's before us, because they've committed to remediate the site, even though there has been an approval from inland wetlands.
They've committed to remediate the specific sites where they tested. They haven't conducted broader testing throughout the entire property in the non-wetland watercourse area. And so we don't know, because we don't have the information, as to where other testing broader testing would reveal. Inland wetlands ordered very narrow, limited testing within the scope of their jurisdiction. There were other areas that were not tested. So what we have is a situation, and we have, again, somebody here tonight that will testify as to the dumping that occurred on the site and the locations, okay, in areas that were not tested. And so,
There's no proposal to build on the lot on which you are claiming there was no further testing.
There is a proposal to build in areas where they did testing, where they did exceed the criteria.
And they've committed to remediate that land.
And are we certain, do we know with any reasonable certainty the manner in which they plan to remediate and whether the remediation will actually spread?
There are laws and rules around which remediation must be accomplished.
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Mr. Rosenstein, I'm trying to understand what's going on here.
Sure.
And from my perspective, we are a body of limited jurisdiction. And you yourself just used that term a minute ago when describing inland wetlands. I think what you're trying to do here is put a square peg in a round hole. Have you, from inland wetlands, have you taken any other action against their decision? Have you appealed it?
No.
'Cause I think the issue here is, do we have the jurisdiction to consider any of this?
I would argue that for areas that are not inland and wetlands, which is clearly the jurisdiction of IWP, who else is to address those issues?
We have a limited jurisdiction, right? And it's laid out in the regulations. It's one of the first or second paragraphs. It's there. I'm sure you've reviewed it. And I don't think it includes environmental issues in which you're discussing. I think you're in the wrong forum.
Well,
And I'd like to hear more information regarding whether we have the jurisdiction to entertain your intervener status at all, and why it shouldn't be denied.
Because pursuant to the Connecticut General Statute, it's not limited to an
Which one?
intervention.
22A-19?
Yes, and I
Right.
can...
That indicates, that's an environmental statute providing intervener status. I think you're in the wrong pew, right?
Mr. Ford, Commissioner Ford, I hear what you're saying. I respectfully disagree with that. Certainly, it doesn't say environmental agencies or inland wetland agencies in that statute, and as Mr. Fallon acknowledged, any agency, an intervener, can make a petition to intervene. And in the jurisdiction, when I appeared before inland wetlands, specifically did not want to deal with issues they felt that were within your jurisdiction.
Right,
So
but we have to
you're
look at the
ping-ponging
statutes
me back
together.
and
They have to be read together. And if we're a body of limited jurisdiction, I think you're asking us to do things we cannot do.
And my response to that, Commissioner, would be that I respectfully disagree as to the limits of your jurisdiction and what you can do. I think that to the extent that it's not dealing with inland, wetland areas or issues, you fully have that jurisdiction, because the Inland Wetlands Agency would tell me, and did tell me, that if it doesn't deal with inland wetlands, okay, your forum is to deal with town planning and zoning, because that's their jurisdiction. Now, here I am before you this evening, with all due respect for your considered time and effort that you commit to the process, and you're saying that merely because it's an environmental issue, it shouldn't be discussed before this commission.
and that's not, and forgive me for interrupting your dialogue here, but that's not what we're saying, okay? I asked specifically whether there was a lot on which they were proposing to build, to construct, that was part of this application on which they didn't do testing or have not committed to remediate. And the answer to that is no. The only lot on which you're claiming they didn't do testing is this lot 3, and that's not a part of this application. That's my understanding. So, we ask, how are these issues relevant to the application that's before us? And that gets to Commissioner Ford's argument about jurisdiction. Our jurisdiction is limited to considering the application before us, the land and the lots on which they're proposing to build. They did testing, they got approval from inland wetlands, they've committed to remediate those lots, and so we're struggling with why and how your arguments are relevant to the application that's before us.
And to address that specifically, the areas that they are building were not thoroughly tested. So they did limited testing in certain areas. They will remediate. The remediation has not been described. Various forms of remediation have the possibility of actually spreading contaminants. We've not been provided any details in the areas they are going to be building upon on how they remediate and what further contaminants they found in areas that they did not test. There will also be site disturbances in areas where the building, physical structure, is not being done. For example, in the conservation area 2, they plan on cleaning out all the invasive species and doing work in conservation area 2 okay, where there's been testimony previously, and we have the individual here tonight, as to contaminants that were dumped on that area, public is going to be given access to that area. As they disturb Lot 2, the conservation area, which they have planned for, how do we know the extent of the disturbance of those contaminants and whether they will pose a risk to the public that's traversing that area?
Right. Now, Lot 2 is where the pond is, correct? Lot 2 is...
the middle one.
That's the middle one, right? I just want to make sure I'm thinking correctly, okay. The pond is, that's all wetlands, right?
It's this area
Yeah.
that's proposed to be the public access for the
Right.
conservation easement that Mr. Fallon spoke about.
Okay.
It would be north
Of the entrance road.
northeast of the pond.
Right, okay. Commissioner Noonan?
I'm sorry, is it Attorney Rosenstein?
I'm an attorney, but not in the state of Connecticut.
Oh, fair enough. With respect to the fact, the not testing properly, can you point me to at least some regulations on our end that give me guidance as to what proper testing would be? Is there any way you can point me to the master plan regulations or anything that we generally use in determining these type of applications?
I didn't take issue with the type of testing that was performed. I took issue with the extent of the testing that was performed.
Bring it into a regulation, some kind of standard that I use.
All right, what do you want us to do? What do you want us to look at? What regulation, what zoning regulations that govern the application do you want us to look at? And what do you want us to do?
Well, I think part of the safety, and if you look at some of the specific zoning regulations, if you look at 27.4.3, you must find that their proposal would not create an undue hazard. Okay? And so I don't think that you can get to that threshold question if there's evidence of contaminants on the site. And we're not talking, just
We know there
paper
are
debris.
contaminants.
Okay.
We know there are contaminants, and they've committed to remediating the site.
Okay. Actually, the report didn't even address the cadmium and chromium that was found on the site. Their report completely missed that, and how it exceeded both the groundwater protection criteria levels. And so, and again, we can present, it's their report. That was what was submitted. It exceeded the levels for both soil contamination and water contamination. And so this proposal is not supposed to have an undue hazard, in terms of, moving forward with it. And I would argue to you that what you could do to ensure that there isn't an undue hazard is conduct broader testing, ask for specific details that the remediation would not make a problem actually worse.
Yeah. Well,
Because you can spread
clearly.
contaminants.
I mean, I don't think that the remediation is to make it worse.
And I think, isn't that your burden? I mean, aren't you here to show that an undue hazard is going to be created?
Well, I think the evidence that the contaminants, let me take a step back. And the Supreme Court for the state of Connecticut has said that it is not the burden upon the intervener to provide information that is missing from the application. You cannot shift the burden on the intervening party or the Conservation Commission or anybody else to supply necessary information to get to a certain point to make a fully informed decision. And what has happened here is basically the table... What?
Is that Nazardo?
Not Nazardo, I believe it's the Samperi decision. And
What's this?
I don't have the site with me this evening. I thought you had, quite honestly, the entire record of the inland wetlands and all the exhibits that were submitted and had the total package of materials before you, but evidently you're giving me the look that you don't have that. So
No, we're not inland wetlands.
I understand that, but this is a proposal that goes through various levels of approval. We've talked about engineering, sewer, things like that you have before you.
What we do have is a permit from inland wetlands to do what it is they're proposing to do.
To build.
And Commissioner Noonan's question is, and I appreciate your response, which I agree with, that the law does say that the burden can't be shifted, but Commissioner Noonan's question, I think, is well taken. we're struggling to understand beyond speculation what your arguments are.
I don't think it's speculation to look at the application and find that on its face, certain information is deficient, when the evidence that is presented from their own reports is that there are contaminants on the property.
We don't have their reports.
Okay.
That's the point. All we have, we had a representation that the permit was granted, and now we have a copy of the permit.
It's part of the record that before inland and wetlands, and so I understand you physically don't have a copy of the report sitting here as town planning and zoning, but I would think that the application would be viewed in total, not in isolation. I've sat here this evening and listened to Mr. Fallon go through the proceedings before inland wetlands, talk about the conservation area, talk about the impact on the site from wetlands and water courses and the total impact that it will have, talk about the sewer running through it. So it's hard to look, to say that there is an overlap with respect to these issues. And so I think looking at it in total...
Yeah, and I'm not suggesting to you that there isn't. There quite possibly can be.
Mm-hmm.
And Commissioner Noonan, Commissioner Ford, me, Commissioner Barrett, we're asking you to identify that.
Right, and
we got 5 minutes left before we curfew for the evening, okay? And
in light of that, I'm going to need more time to come back, and now knowing that you don't have those materials, I'll clearly bring those materials with me as part of the presentation. Tonight, we do have the witness who observed the dumping on the site that can testify to the dumping.
Because we've had about 20 minutes of back and forth now about trying to, struggling with, the relevance of what you're doing. So please have him come up and let's do that so that he doesn't have to come back next time if he doesn't want to.
Mr. Chair, could I just ask a quick question?
Sure. Commissioner Coleman.
When you do come back, one of the things, and I think that this is a kind of a spin on what Commissioner Noonan was saying, your contention is that there was not adequate testing. Can you provide some standard as to what testing should have been that we can then look at and say, yes, you're right, there was not adequate testing, or no, there was adequate testing?
Right, like a guideline that says
guideline,
there should have been 36 pits, there were only 27. They obviously didn't do what the statute or the regulation requires them to do. It's not before us.
Remediation will impact the
Okay? So let's do what you...
Thank you.
Call your witness.
Okay. Mike, you want to...
Recess.
All right. Yeah, April 12th, okay? So, before we break here...
Can I just make one quick comment, because we got about 4 minutes? Mr. Chairman, it's certainly not my intent to frustrate yourself or the rest of the commissioners sitting here this evening or at future hearings. It's not the intent to re-argue matters that were already addressed before inland wetlands. And to the extent that myself, I've been remiss in not getting you documents I assume that you had as part of the record. I apologize for that, and we'll make sure that I have those available next time. I've heard the questions from the commission's members, and will do my best to provide that information. It's, in some respects, trying to prove a negative when there's been zero testing done in certain areas to say, well, what should have been done there? I mean, the testing that was done in certain areas should be conducted on a broad basis in areas where it was only limited to wetlands and water courses, since that's your jurisdiction. But I've heard what you've had to say, and I appreciate your time.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate that you're sensitive to those issues. When we come back, we're going to need to be focused and germane on the relevant issues from the application that's before us, and not speculative arguments, all right? I mean, you've got the platform to make your arguments and put in your evidence, but you have to do it in a succinct and germane way, okay? So, with-
April 12th.
April 12th is going to be our next date. Attorney Fallon, you're
Follow up on your comment, just so, in fairness to Mr. Rosenstein, so he knows where I'm coming from.
use your microphone, please.
The Samperi case was a case where an applicant failed...
I don't want to hear argument right now. You're going to have an opportunity for rebuttal.
He has the burden of proving the allegations of his
Okay, not appropriate for you to jump in an argument now. You have an opportunity to finish on April 12th, okay? And Attorney
sir.
Fallon, you'll have an opportunity to make all the arguments you want in rebuttal.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay?
Chairman.
I'm going to adjourn, keep the hearing open, and I'm going to adjourn the meeting April 12th to follow up on this one.